I hope this works. It says we're live.
Woohoo.
Hey, everyone. Let us know if you can hear us.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
I think there's like a 5-second delay or so in chat, so if we're a little slow responding, that's why. Is there a second delay or so in chat? So if we're a little slow responding. Oh, I can hear myself. Yeah. Is that coming for yours?
Yeah, that's coming from me. Sorry. I had it I forgot I'm on like that YouTube page so I can see the chats and things, and I forgot to mute it.
Hi, everyone.
Yep, same.
Wow, I recognize so many names from Twitter. We have Cassie, Haisaki, Sachiko, Linda, Farah, hey. Welcome, Clifton,
Hello.
Amy, Brock, Doppel. This is first time streaming, so not sure how well it'll go. Hopefully it won't lag too much. If it does, just say something in chat so we know. Also, if you hear any crying in the background, I'm sorry. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and she really wants mommy right now.
Oh.
So you're gonna say that's me.
I hope she'll forgive me. So we're just gonna give people like a few minutes to join. It would really help if you could retweet the tweet that I sent out that we're going live, and tag anyone that you think might be interested in seeing this and asking questions. So not just like about becoming a software developer, but like anything IT related. So yeah. Hello, I don't know how to say your name. Street style, I don't know. Welcome. Hey, Shane.
I think it's Streestel.
Streestel?
Also, I'm running on 4 hours of sleep. I'm probably going to butcher so many things. I'm sorry if I just start not making sense.
My name is Yan.
Nice to meet you, Yan.
Nice to meet you too, LaShawn. Never met you before.
First time. Well, we've only met once in person.
Yeah, but I mean, it's 2022, so.
This will be available later, Saki. So probably a few minutes after the live stream ends. As long as there's nothing like horribly embarrassing that I need to edit out.
A story style. Oh, now that you said it, of course it's story style.
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Oh, story style. Right,
sense.
right.
Now I can't unsee it. What did I say before? I think I said something really. Yeah, I think I said something really embarrassing. Sorry, Ash.
All right, let me just get this at a good angle so I can see chat and everything. All right.
Everyone hear us okay? How
Can you
does
hear us
our
okay?
audio sound?
Does LaShawn sound okay? How about Philip and Yan?
You sound great, LaShawn.
Oh, thank you. Look, guys, I brought my tissues because I like crying randomly. So, yeah. You'll probably see me using those, not just from crying, but I'm also kind of congested. So, I apologize.
Sounds like it's good to go.
All right. Everyone can hear us
How's
fine.
the lag? Is it smooth?
Yeah, it's definitely like 20 seconds between video and chat, I think.
I think that's normal, though. The lag is normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys ready to get started?
For me.
Live streaming's so hard.
40 people. I think that's a good number.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's begin. All right. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to our first live stream. This is the Sayonara Sensei live stream. Yay.
Yay.
So, yeah, basically, this is a stream where we answer your questions about changing careers. So, whether you're an English teacher in Japan or some other career that you're just not happy with and you're thinking about switching to tech, but you don't have any tech related experience and you're wondering like how the heck you can make that change, we're basically here to try and help out as best as we can and answer all of your questions. Okay? So with that said, we're just going to do our introductions really short. So I'm first. Yay. My name's LaShawn Toyoda, and I'm 37 years old. I moved to Tochigi, Japan back in April 2011. So I've been in Japan for like 11 years now. I moved to Yokohama in 2012, and it's where I've lived the longest since coming to Japan, hence why my nickname is the Yokohama Life. But that's a little bit misleading, and you'll see why. I moved to Tokyo in 2018. That's right, I don't live in Yokohama anymore, and I'm so sorry. It confuses so many people on Twitter, because whenever I comment anything, they're like, oh, that forest looks really nice in Yokohama. I'm like, thanks, but it's not Yokohama. But yeah, I moved here, got married, started a family. And as you all know, the big thing that we don't want to mention happened like at the end of 2019 that changed everyone's lives. And that's when I started coding in 2020 during the lockdown here in Japan. And I got my first job as a software engineer in April 2021. So in less than a year, I was able to switch from English teaching to being a programmer, which is pretty awesome. Then the way a lot of people know me is based on a project I made called Find a Doc. Was right around the time when vaccinations rolled out and they were really difficult to get in Japan. So overnight, I just created a database to help people share like cancellation waiting lists to get vaccinated. And that's when my Twitter just really kind of blew up. And people became really like interested in like how I made the transition from English teacher to developer and then making a project like that in the span of a year. And yeah, so I completed my first year in April. So I feel like I'm legit now. I'm no longer like a junior dev, although all of my more experienced developers all say like, junior dev doesn't really mean anything. Everyone's a software developer nowadays. But yeah, that's it for me. And Philip, how about you?
Sure. Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Philip Ermish. So I try to write down random stuff. My format's a little bit different than LaShawn's.
That's cool. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, so I moved to Tokyo, Japan in 2019. So basically the 1 year before, everything turned chaotic. But yeah, I moved from Seattle in the US. So why I moved to Japan was honestly, I've been trying to move to Japan for about 6 years now. The culture is awesome. I love the style and just how people live with everything is around you to do, right? Instead of trying to have everything just in your house where you never leave. I like to get out and explore, right? And go see the world. So that's something really special to me. And Japan is just a great hub for all that. So I was really excited. Got to move here finally. Yeah, here's a list of my hobbies. I just listed them out there just in case anyone wanted to know. Yeah, like I said before, I love to adventure and go exploring. This is just something that's kind of a really important part of me. And so much so that we ended up making this next bullet point Tokyo Adventure Podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all about like exploring and stuff. Honestly, if any of you have heard it kind of slacking lately, need to put up some more podcast episodes. But yeah, next one. I love to code, so kind of spoiling it, but that's why I'm here. Coding is a core part of my life, something I love to do. Photography, videos, YouTube stuff. And the next two are gaming and anime. I don't know why I listed them all here, but there you go. Now you know a little bit more about me. So the next one's kind of an interesting one is how I got into software. So originally started in engineering. That was what my degree was in college, and I was building circuit boards. And I ended up switching into software, which I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide. But yeah, I kind of went into software almost on accident, unintentionally. I wasn't planning on it. I'll talk about it in the next half. So why am I joining the stream? Because LaShawn is awesome and I wanted to support her, and she's done a lot of really great things. And I was really happy that she asked me to help her join. So I got to work on Find a Doc with her. That was really cool, just being able to help out people, and I loved it. So we're like, hey, let's try to help people get into tech because it's out there for everyone to do. So yeah, I'm here to help answer any questions, help bring an extra perspective. More the merrier. All right, next one. So yeah, if you're wondering like, so what, I don't know, Philip, what did he do? What code has he done? Here's my experience. So before software, I started out in, I think my first job was mowing lawns. And then I did IT tech support. Yeah, and then I did some pet sitting. So I like worked on a horse ranch once, and I like would babysit a macaw and everything unrelated to that. And then I graduated from college and I got into software. So the next slide, or next bullet point. So I started in 2012, and I have a unique experience, I think, from a lot of people, is I've worked across a lot of companies. So I've gotten to work in 8 different companies, and I wanted to kind of just see how they all work. They're all good. There was never like a bad reason for leaving or anything like that, but I wanted to just kind of see what's out there and see how companies are different. So I feel like this might be good. So if some people have different questions around like what different companies look like, or are they all the same, maybe I can help answer a few of those. So I worked for 6 of them as an engineer, basically from like 1 to a senior to a staff, and then kind of principal E. And then the next ones I started moving into management. So today I'm a senior engineering manager at Indeed. I wasn't sure if I wanted to say this, but I figured anyone who goes and looks up my stuff will instantly find that out.
They're going to find it out.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, Indeed is really cool. I work there. I love doing management. You can go to the next 2 or 3. So what I do, build out front-end platforms. So we basically build out front-end systems that lots of different teams use. There's like 30 different teams that use our code. It's a lot of different things around that. And mentorship. This is something I love. I like to help people get jobs. That's the Indeed thing. But also like I like helping people get into code. And this is something I've loved doing. So naturally, this was a great live stream to join.
He does enjoy mentoring. He helped mentor me during my job hunt here in Japan. So if you're like done and you're actually like done with boot camp and everything, you're actually like job hunting, but you want to practice like interview questions and stuff, Philip's your man. Go hit him up on Twitter.
Those are, I do 10 interviews a week.
I forgot to add animation for you. That's okay. Yan can tell us all about herself all at once.
Yeah. Go for it, Yan.
Hey, everyone. So my name's Yan. I live in Tokyo. I actually grew up in Seattle. Phil, did you grow up in Seattle? You said you moved here from there.
I grew up in Texas, but I claim the last place as my origin.
Seattle's wonderful. So I grew up there, and so a lot of people think that that's how I kind of got into tech, but not at all. I grew up around, it's interesting. I grew up around so much tech because like there were so many, like Microsoft was really big. Like I remember I didn't see any sort of like Apple tech like at all. Like there were, because everything in my public school was sponsored by Microsoft. So it was just like Windows machines, like, you know, the entire way through. I'd never touched a Mac before. I actually thought I would go into finance, go into business. So I studied totally random stuff in university. I studied economics and Arabic because I thought that was what I was into. And I started working in finance, in commodities to be specific. And I sort of found myself stuck. And I feel like a lot of people that I talk to are in that sort of position or have found themselves in that sort of position where they choose a career path when, you know, they're like 18 or 19. And then they, you know, spend 4 years in university studying that, they graduate and they actually start working in that field that they've chosen, realizing that they don't actually like it. And so I found myself very much stuck there and thinking like, what do I do? Like, you know, I just spent like 4 years trying to get this job and now I have this job, but I don't want it. And like, what else do I do? Like, I have no other skills, you know? And so that's when I started, well, I wouldn't say started, but around that time, this was like 2013-ish. And that was when like Uber and Airbnb were getting like pretty big, in that like they were global and they were really like, I hate to use the word, but disrupting like the way that we were doing things. And so I thought like, oh, that's really awesome. I want to be a part of a company that does something like that is that like impactful. And I also had like different ideas for companies that I wanted to start as well that all required some kind of like tech. And so because I had just no idea about anything related to tech, I thought I would just follow what the internet was telling me to do and learn how to code. So this is like 2013, 2014. I started to just like, I did Codecademy. This was back when Codecademy was free and when they only had like two things. Like it was just JavaScript and I think they had like an HTML thing. So I did those. And it was really early on. And I was just like, in my mind, I wasn't even thinking about being a software engineer. I was just like, oh, I'll learn how to code and like maybe I'll be able to slap an MVP like a little prototype together and like use that to like raise money or like find a CTO or whatever. And like, you know, and then none of my business ideas really panned out. Like I was never really like passionate about any of those. And so I found myself kind of like back at square one. And that's when I heard about these coding boot camps that had just popped up in the US. This was like really early days. So there were only like 4, I think, in the US at the time. Yeah, it was like now they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
I'm like running one, right? I'm running one. but back then it was like no one had heard of a coding boot camp. Like they were just totally rare. And so I started to look into them and I had like 2 friends in the Bay Area. So I asked both of them, like, have you heard of these things? Do they work? And should I go to this one? And both of them were working in tech. One of them was a software engineer and they were like, yeah, they do work. And this is the one that I recommend. So both of them recommended the same one, which is called Hack Reactor. They're still around. They've got like kind of purchased by another larger coding bootcamp. But I went there like pretty early on. Like they were only about a year and a half old. And so, yeah, I quit my job, paid like, it was like $20,000, and moved to San Francisco. I was working in Singapore at the time, moved to San Francisco to attend this unaccredited coding boot camp. And I remember like just explaining my decision making to people at the time. And they were just like, you're nuts. Yeah. You're like crazy. Like, give us a call when it works out, but I did it and it worked. Like I was like pretty shocked. And that's when I got really into just the idea of like alternative like education programs. My mom's a teacher, so I'd always kind of like done teaching as a side hustle. So in university, I taught bartending classes and whiskey tasting classes, and it was like a lucrative thing that I did. So teaching was always just like a side hustle for me. And so I always liked it. And then going through a coding boot camp, and then I got a job afterwards. I got a job in Silicon Valley at a data science machine learning startup, right? It's like very SF, like all the
very
buzzwords.
Technical.
Yeah. But it worked. And I was like amazed at like the fact that this little 3-month, taking a little 3-month course was actually able to help me do like a complete 180 in my career, right? Where I felt like I was absolutely stuck in finance. At the time I was just the area in finance that I was at was so specialized. It was really like 3 other companies that I could have gone to, right? And they were all the same. So it's like, if I don't like my job now, like I'm not going to like it when I like change the sign of the building that I go into, And then I went from that to, wow, I'm a software engineer. Wow, the world of tech is like completely open to me. And just like all of these doors started opening up. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. I want other people to like have that opportunity and have that experience. And so while I was working as a software engineer, I was teaching for fun. I liked it. It was also fun to like help other people make that transition as well. And also like for me as a software engineer, it was a way to kind of like push myself to keep learning.
Yeah.
So I would do stuff
Stay
like
on your toes.
Yeah, stay on my toes. Like for me, my passion was kind of just teaching. And so I would volunteer to teach something that I didn't know. So I would like be like, oh, I'll teach like that Django, that like free Django course that this nonprofit is doing. And I had like 3 weeks to learn Django. And I would use the 3 weeks to like learn Django enough that I could teach a bunch of beginners how to do it. And it was a lot of fun. Like that's how I learned a lot of stuff. So one thing led to another. I ended up in my free time teaching for the coding bootcamp that I graduated from, and then started a coding bootcamp in Jordan. I was a remote CTO for them.
Yeah, I remember that.
In 2016. And after I left that, met my very long story short, met my current co-founder in SF, and he wanted to start a coding bootcamp in Tokyo. I wanted to move to Japan because my boyfriend and now husband was living there, and also this is a nice place to live. Like
it is.
Tokyo is great, right?
It is.
And so and I had experience. I was a software engineer, and I'd started a coding bootcamp. So we buddied up together, and we launched Code Chrysalis in 2017 in Tokyo. And so I'm here today because like I'm really passionate about strategizing career changes. Like I just do this stuff for fun. It's really fun getting to like see see what people have done, and then figuring out what their narrative is and how they can use that and the different skills that they've learned and apply that to their current job hunt and figure out like kind of what story that they want to be selling or talking about. So I really like that. It's also fun talking about being a non-technical technical person. Yeah. Like I know I'm a software engineer, but I still kind of think of myself as a non-technical person because I was one for like most of my life. Like I was never very good at math. I was always really, I basically just avoided STEM for most of my life. So I really like talking about that. I love job hunting strategy. Like I've always been just I liked job hunting. I liked talking about weird. Salary negotiation. I know it's really weird. It's really weird. I really liked interviewing.
I was going to ask, did you do a bunch of interviews?
Yeah. Like when I was job hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did that shit for fun. It was fun. I mean, like, so I cut my teeth on finance interviews, on like investment banking and consulting interviews. And those are terrifying. Like I cried in one of mine. And then so going over to tech interviews, like, you're just like in front of usually a dude in a hoodie. Like they're not very, like, I didn't think that they were very intimidating after like being in front of a bunch of
dude in a hoodie
suits.
and a whiteword, right?
Yeah.
Like I can handle that.
Like a movie. Yeah. Sounds like a podcast or something.
Yeah.
We actually have a couple questions rolling in.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, Tim, this will be up late after the stream is over. So let me scroll back up just a moment. Someone had asked, do you feel prepared after 3 months for the rigors of the engineering position? So this, I guess, is a question for me and Yan, since we both went through boot camps, right? I went through Yan's boot camp. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And Yan already knows this is how I feel. And I think a lot of people feel this way. It doesn't matter whether you go to boot camp or 4U University, you will never feel prepared for your first job.
Yep.
You will be...
You never feel prepared.
You will be terrified. You'll feel like an imposter. It does not matter. Like while I was job hunting, there's this really awesome engineer from Google who like offered me some advice. And he studied 4 years computer science at a really prestigious university that I won't name. And the first job he got was like at a startup company. And his boss, like after I think he said a few months, like 3 months or so, basically just like chewed into him because he didn't know how to do certain things. because the university taught him all of these concepts, but he didn't know how to do like some of the basics, like things with Git or whatnot, right? And so his boss was just like shaking his head like, oh my God, you should know how to do this. Why don't you know how to do this? So it doesn't matter like whether it's a boot camp or not, you're not going to feel prepared. But I can say after having gone through the boot camp and then actually starting to work, I was more prepared than some of the people who studied at university. Like that's
I
just
can believe that.
the
To be
honest
very
truth.
honest, yes.
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of people are always comparing coding boot camps to computer science degrees, and I don't see them as the same thing. So if you're like, oh, is this equivalent to a computer science degree? They're very different things. It's kind of like the closest analogy that I can think of is kind of like being a math major and then going to work as an accountant.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of the same sort of skills in a sense, but then when you're an accountant, you need to know just a lot more stuff. Like you need to know the software, like, you need to know spreadsheets. They don't teach that in like a math major course. You need to know laws and things like that. Like the tax rules and things. I'm not an accountant, very obviously, but that's kind of the difference. It's maybe not quite so stark, but it is like there is a big difference between the two. And so, I hear from both sides. I have friends who have a computer science degree and they complain about the things that they didn't learn in university that I learned in a coding boot camp.
Yeah.
But then, when I was working as a software engineer, I complained about the stuff that they got at, their computer science through their computer science degree. So it's kind of like, I don't know, coding boot camps are kind of like in the middle. Like we're very practical. We teach like the practical things that you might need. And there are elements of like computer science fundamentals, like algorithms and things like that. But it's like very much in that middle, that gap that universities don't really cover. But companies expect you to know. So, yeah.
Nice. Someone was asking, like, does a non-CS degree restrict access to job interviews, especially in Japan, when you usually need, a degree for a working visa?
Working visa.
Yeah. We kind of talked about this briefly, not in the stream, but when we were meeting up earlier. This is a complicated answer, but the gist of it is that you do not need a CS degree to get a job as a software engineer, but you do need some kind of 4-year degree to get a visa. You either need a degree or you need like a spousal visa or a permanent resident visa.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Or the test.
Can you talk a little bit about the test?
Yeah, there's like a magical unicorn test. It's like a multiple choice. It's like some like magical test. Actually, no, I know someone who's taken it. But it's a test. It's called the IELTS. It's something. I can look it up and post it later. Yeah, IELTS. But it's a multiple choice test. It's not very relevant to anything. It's just like random software facts. You need like random engineering facts that you need to know. And they offer it, I think, like twice. You can take it in Japanese if your Japanese is good, but if you need to take it in English, I think they definitely offer it in the Philippines. I think that they also offer it in Singapore. So you have to take it. And if you pass, that is the equivalent to a 4-year degree. But I think overall, to answer that previous question of like, do you need a CS degree to get a job? No, you just need a degree if you need a visa.
Yeah, exactly.
However, having a CS degree is a way to get your foot through the door. However, the nice thing about coding, which I really liked, is that you can prove that you can code without a CS degree.
Yeah.
And so that's what I absolutely love. Algorithms are kind of really hated by certain people. Algorithms are basically like these like usually they'll be presented in the form of a coding challenge, like a little, they're sort of similar to like math problems that you would get as a kid. Like Sally has like 4 apples and like da 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 da. It's like that, but like in a code format, and you have to pass them. And some people hate them. I actually think they're really great for boot camp people, boot camp grads, or really like anyone from an alternative background. And it's because you can literally just study and pass them. Like it's just a matter of studying. And I love that. So we've had, students who have, or graduates who applied to places and gotten dinged, like they gotten rejected because they didn't have that computer science degree. And so what we did was we asked them to reply back to the rejection email and say, can I prove myself? Can you give me a coding challenge? And like sometimes that's worked. Like the company has given them a coding challenge, and in some cases they were able to pass, right?
Nice.
And get in through the next round. And I have a story like that as well when I was looking for a job, where I got dinged from a company, and then I just did a coding challenge for them and I passed.
I think you kind of reminded me. So in one of the places I worked, there were some people that had CS degrees, but actually majority of our people on our team did not. And some of them were very interesting. One person was a botanist. Some people were musicians and music majors. Another person was a physicist. Someone was a nuclear scientist. Like it kind of goes from all ranges, right? Botanist to nuclear physicist. Right? Like that's about as broad in the spectrum as you can get. And yeah, I think to your point, like when you're doing those interviews or taking those questions, it's kind of levels the field, right? Like everybody has an equal and fair shot. It doesn't matter who you are. It's just, can you pass this, right?
Yep.
And I think that's really cool. A lot of other industries don't necessarily have that, right? There's biases or certain things, but you can truly just learn your way on your own. You can take a course. There's lots of different ways, but it's self-empowered, I guess, is that point, right? Like you can really change your future just through effort.
Yep.
It might sound too good to be true, but it really is true. And this kind of ties into the study that Ray Lee asked. He wanted to know how much I studied per day in order to get a job, right? And
you were on the upper hand, like on the upper end of the study spectrum, LaShawn. You were like you studied a lot more.
I was determined. I was going to get a tech job, and I was going to do it in a year, and I was dying, basically. So really, just to put it in perspective, my daughter was like 9 months old or so when I started. She was just going into daycare. So she would leave the house at around 9. And I would practice coding until she got home at like 5. And then I would feed her dinner, play with her and everything, get her to sleep by 8. And then I would continue coding from like 8 p.m. to 3 in the morning. And I did that every single day from August to February, basically. I would not recommend that. Like I went through things so quickly. It was so hard to retain that information. Honestly, if you can, I would say take a full year or more. Go at your own pace. Just do it in the evenings. Like when you get off work, spend 2 hours a day. Even if you don't get everything done that you plan to, at least open up a coding lesson, dedicate 2 hours to it, and just get as far as you can. And as long as you don't give up, like you'll be able to, eventually get to a point where you're confident in your skill to start applying for coding jobs and, get interviews for one. So yeah. How about you, Yan?
You had a crazy aggressive schedule for yourself. Like I remember when I first started talking to you and you were like, oh, I've got a baby. I was like, all right. Like I literally just said, the things that you just said, I said to you. I was like, take your time. Like, like this is, if you want like a strong, like if you want like a, study, like this is what you should be doing. And I gave you kind of like, you should be hitting these within like these months. And you totally surpassed that. You went way faster than I ever imagined. I was like, holy crap, this girl is on fire. Like,
I was like, I need a job.
Wow.
I got a baby to take care of. We're in the middle of a pandemic.
I know.
I might need to move. I'm not taking a few months. I'm doing this in 1 month.
Yeah. I don't know how you did it. Like it still blows my mind. For me, how long did it take me? So I would say, it's hard to say. 2014, January 2014, I looked back in my email. That was the first email that I got from Codecademy, because I had signed up for it, and they sent me like the welcome to Codecademy. Like I still have that email. And I'm pretty sure it was because like for my New Year's resolution, I was like, I'm gonna learn how to code, god damn it. And then the next email from Codecademy didn't come until like another month or so later, the next time I logged into Codecademy. And Codecademy, like the next email was like, great job on like going at it the second time. So it like I think it was really difficult for me to get started with coding just because the beginning steps are like kind of dull. Like it's kind of like learning a language and you're just memorizing the alphabet or, whatever letters. And it's like getting comfortable with just how things look. And so it can be kind of grinding and boring. And so I had very much an on and off relationship with coding, like until maybe March. And that was when like my job I was just like, I need to get out of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Inspiring, right?
Yeah.
Well, at the time, like I remember, sorry, I just kicked my
It's okay.
my desk. At the time I was really wondering, like, it was my first job. So I was like, is this just like what having a job is like? Like, do you just like hate it for a while and it gets better? Or so should I stay until it gets better? Or like, is this just like a no-go and I should get out? And I remember like a friend of mine asked, do you like your boss's job?
Ooh.
And I was like, no, I do not want my boss's life,
That's a good way to
and
look
then they
at
were
it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it totally changed my perception. And they were like, well, if you don't like your boss's job, then you should get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Because like that's what you're working
That's what-
You're
toward,
gonna
yeah.
eventually be.
right?
Wow.
And so that's when I was like, oh yeah, okay, I need to get out because I can like predict my future here. Like even if I do manage to get to that level, like I'm still gonna hate it. So I need to leave. So that happened around like March, and coding wasn't really like, I was doing it like every other weekend for like a few hours each time. And that just doesn't cut it. Like when you're trying to learn something brand new, like you need to do it consistently. So around like March, April, that's when I really doubled down. I was studying every day, every other day. I was all weekends just studying. I made friends with people also in my same boat. And if you don't have friends who are also doing it with you, like get some study buddies.
Yeah.
I had a guy that I met up with every Saturday for a while. And we just coded, and it was just someone who he was like kind of on my same level. We were just, like chit chatting, and it was great to have someone also be struggling along with me. So that was really nice. And then that's when I found out about like coding boot camps around that time too. And there was one that was really difficult to get into, or it was touted as being the most difficult one to get into. So without even like knowing too much, I was like, I'm going to do that one. I'm going to do the one that's like difficult to get into. Cause like they were all really expensive. So I was like, if I'm going to do one, I want to make sure that it's one that's not just going to like take my money for the sake of taking my money. And, so my focus was just studying to get into it. And yeah, that's basically what I did. I quit my job in July of 2014. And I did it kind of like on a whim. Like I had already saved up enough money, but I kept making an excuse of like, oh, I'll just like stay and like save up a little bit more. Eventually like I got to my biannual review where my boss was like, how do you think you did this like the past 6 months? And I was like shit, and I need to get out. I literally just said that. I need to get out. So yeah. So probably when I started seriously until was probably about a year, because after I quit in July, I got into my coding boot camp in August.
Mm-hmm.
And that coding boot camp, the class I got into started in December. So I was basically like studying through then. I moved in with my boyfriend to save on rent. Very, very handy.
Yeah.
And I was studying, and I did the coding boot camp, graduated in like March-ish. And then I got a job in April, and I started in May.
That's pretty fast.
So
wow.
it was about a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a kid.
Yeah.
And there was a good part of it where I was doing it full time.
Yeah.
Right. And when I did it, I didn't have a kid either. So it's amazing that you were able to do that with another human that you had to keep alive.
It's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also like the best decision I've ever made, because my life now compared to like 2 years ago is just, it's completely different. So I'm going to touch.
I think.
Sorry, Philip. I'm going to let you answer these questions too. What level of Japanese do you need to get a software engineering in Japan? So what's your experience with?
Sure.
Share your Japanese level. Yeah.
Yeah, my Japanese level is about N4. So I mean, it's pretty bad. Like, I can hold basic conversations, but I couldn't survive if it was an everyday. And so realistically, so I work for a company that speaks English. English is the primary language. And there's mix of different companies that aren't just Japanese. So if you aren't mastering Japanese, you don't have N2, N1, there are places that you can work, you can get into. On the other hand, if you have Japanese, it does open up your options a lot. And honestly, the thing that I kind of miss is sometimes if you speak Japanese every day in your workplace, a lot of people fake it till they make it. Where they have pretty rough Japanese, and then you go in there and you like, what did that person say? I don't understand. And you have to go research it and learn it. And that's honestly how you grow, right? And some places are more flexible where you can do that as long as you can get your work done. So I think to answer the question, you don't have to know Japanese for certain places, but it definitely helps. And in Japan, a lot of companies speak Japanese, so it does broaden your options pretty significantly.
That is true. Like,
but I would say don't let it hold you back, right?
Yeah. Don't let it hold you back.
From a job hunting perspective, if you don't speak Japanese well enough, like I would say N2, N1 level, it does limit, the places that you can apply to. So, just from pure numbers, you're going to be limited. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get a job. No, we've seen a lot of, people get jobs without speaking like at an N1, N2 level. But it is a little harder. Like it is like, it's like one, like, what is it called? Not disability.
Disadvantage?
It's too late. Disadvantage. Yes, I know. I can English.
I can English today. I've been bad recently, but yeah. I want to know if you two disagree with me or not on this, but I think, one, you don't need Japanese to get a good job in Japan. And two, you will find better jobs if you go for companies that don't require Japanese than if you go for companies that do. You will find jobs with better benefits and higher pay if you don't have to speak Japanese.
As an average, I would say yes.
On average,
every company is unique.
Yeah. It is a stereotype, but I have seen a lot of really great companies that are Japanese, but we just don't hear about them or see them because they don't have an English presence, right? We actually had one of my favorite stories was we had a company, like this Japanese startup that was looking for students, and they had a really boring website. Like, I forget what they did, but it was like a really boring website, but all the people there were just like top notch, like great people, like really talented, etc. And so we introduced, like we told one of our graduates, like, I think he would really like it. Like his Japanese was like I think at an N2 level where he would, get along, and they spoke like enough English that we were like, this is probably going to work. And initially when we told him about this company and we showed him the website, he was like, yeah, I don't know about that. Not really into that.
Yeah.
And then we were just like, before you judge, just go talk to them. and he talked to them and he loved them. He was like, this is awesome. Like, this place is great. I love the guys. Like, the team is really wonderful. And he works for them.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
He ended up getting an offer there.
Mhm.
Let me answer an easy question on here.
Yeah.
If I'm bad at math, am I doomed? No.
No.
You're totally fine. In fact, I honestly would say most jobs don't require much math. I mean, there's basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, but I mean, you're putting it into a computer, so it's like putting it into a calculator even at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not doomed at all, is the answer.
The only time I've used math in my 1 year of coding was when I was going through Code Academy and the Bootcamp. And there were some math challenges like find the area of a rectangle. I was like, how the hell do I do that? I haven't done that since high school, and I'd have to like look it up. But other than that, I haven't had to use math at all. So I think that's a misconception, right?
Yeah, I had to do that once too. There was an interview long time ago, like 2013. I had a question like that, and they're like, and here's the formula for the area of a rectangle.
Yeah.
Because they're like, we don't expect anyone to,
because everyone forgets.
So, I mean, it was to that level. Yeah.
I love it. I actually think that learning how to code has made me more interested in math and better at math.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Because like, you know, once you get to a certain level in math, it's like all variables.
Yeah.
Right. It's like all alphabets,
Functions.
like letters and things. Right.
Yeah.
And it's functions. And at the time, I like really couldn't wrap my mind around functions, around like all of these variables. And now I know what those are. So I'm like, it's been on my to-do list to do like some like math class just to see if I can pick up on stuff better now that I actually know what a function is. Right.
I used to think I was pretty good at math, and then I started coding and I realized like there's just so much I don't know, and I'm kind of like, I'm so. So, but we do have,
I'm reading.
Yeah, quite a few questions.
Do you want to answer them?
Yeah,
LaShawn, like in order.
We're falling a little bit behind. Let's answer some of the.
We could group them.
Maybe there's a lot of them about like software engineer life. So maybe we could answer the ones related to software engineer life and then go to whatever tickles us next.
All right, let's see. Just really quick, Cassie, I do work for an American company in Japan. And Philip, you technically do as well, right?
They are technically a Japanese company, but they are American based.
They got bought by Recruit.
Yeah. Recruit is Japanese, but they run as an American company and they function pretty independently in that style.
So, yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say, like Jan said, a lot of these questions are about kind of like software engineer life and that initial transition when you're working full time as something else and you don't know like where to begin, you know, with the few hours of free time that you do have, like, do you even have enough time? So just, for someone who is a full-time teacher right now or working any other full-time tech job, how would you recommend they get started in tech? What are like some initial first steps they could take?
Just try one of the free like online courses.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
So Code Academy was one of them that we mentioned, and I think you said Khan.
I really like Khan Academy.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before it even started because we were seeing what we all thought, and I think just figuring out if you like it is kind of a first step, right? Or just not even if you like it, but just try it so you know, because a lot of times you'll go see people talking about code like we're doing right now. Oh, code's great, go do it. But what does it actually look like, and what does it mean? I think that's the best first step, honestly, is just go start trying it. Like actually write a line of code, see if you can do hello world. What is that, right? What does that even mean? And just see how it feels. You may love it or you may absolutely hate it, right? And determining what that means for yourself, right? Like, do you want to get into a job just because, you know, they have good pay or it's better than what you have? Or is it just something you might be passionate about? Like, a lot of people end up really liking it. I think, yeah, it sounds like you were kind of hinting at that. Like, you were doing it and it's kind of interesting solving the problems, and you started seeing the variables and everything. And a lot of times it can
Yeah.
be really interesting.
I would also say give it an actual shot, because I hear a lot of times like people will try it once and then think like it's not for them. I feel like sometimes when people start learning how to code, they set like just like crazy expectations for themselves, like, oh, I'm gonna like do this and like suddenly I'm gonna know this stuff. And learning how to code as an adult is very different. Like I don't think people remember what it's like to be a kid and constantly having to like really learn how to think, or like change the way that your brain is like just like forcing your brain to kind of like learn in these different ways. As adults, we're never really challenged like that, but when you learn how to code, it's really challenging in that sense. You're like teaching your brain how to think in a totally different way for some people. And so the other thing is like, don't set unrealistic expectations for yourself. Like, take it slow, take your time. Don't think that you have to like suddenly be able to do stuff, or that you have to remember everything. I find that often that is like a big limitation that people set on themselves when they get started. For me, it was really boring to get started. Like I mentioned that earlier. The first steps, it took me a little bit to like, I just kept going back to it. Just because it's kind of dull in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like memorizing like hiragana, right? It's just like a grind.
Yeah. And
LaShawn, maybe
Mhm.
I have a question that might be good for us to answer. Someone asked, like, I'm seeing some questions around, it feels risky to try to learn something new. I'm scared. I want to put in all this effort, but I don't even know if it's possible.
Yeah.
I think we've said, you know, go try it, but I have my thoughts. LaShawn, what do you think are the chances? Like, if someone invests time in this and they, you know, they try out coding, they're like, all right, I'm going to do X number of hours a week, like 2 hours a week or 40 hours a week, you know,
I say
what are their
like,
chances of getting something?
well, first of all, about the risk, everything in life is a risk. I know people say that, but just coming to Japan was a risk that you already took. You know, that was a bigger risk than what starting coding will be.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
like, so don't be afraid to take risk. And this is not to sound like down on teaching or anything like that, but what will happen if you fail? Well, you'll just continue teaching. It won't get any worse. You might have to find another teaching job, but at least, you know, give it a try and see if it is something you are interested in. And it's not just coding. There are some other tech jobs that we're going to talk about in this stream. You know, if you try coding, you think, God, I hate this. This is awful. Do I have to do this if I want to make a decent living in Japan? The answer is no, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But give it a try first and see if it's something you even want to do, if it's something you even want to commit to.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, like when I was
at least then you know, right?
Yeah. When I was an Eikaiwa teacher, I'd work from like 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Like I had no life.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh.
So what are you going to
rough.
do? You know, when you get home at 9 p.m., everything's closed. You know, your friends are all tired. You can't hang out. So
Yeah.
at that time, I would study Japanese, but now I kind of wish I had studied coding instead. I thought studying Japanese will get me ahead, will provide me with better job opportunities. It did make my life significantly easier in Japan. I got to about N2 level, but it didn't really give me a skill that I could really sell myself with. You know, Japanese people speak better Japanese than I can. So what do I have that to offer that they don't have, right? It's
Yeah.
And I was 36 when I started coding. I think that's a pretty big risk. You know, 36, a mom, potentially going to be a single mom at that time.
Yeah.
So I say, give it a shot, just in your free time. See if you like it. There's no harm in trying it out.
Yeah. For me, I was stuck I wasn't an English teacher, but I was stuck in a job that I really didn't like. And the way that I looked at it was I had to take a risk if I wanted any sort of change. Like if you are in a place where you're not happy with you like to get out of it, you have to take a risk. Like it's not going to change is not going to present itself like, and have it be a smooth, whatever. For me, I was like, if I want to get out of it right now, I need to take a risk. And, to me, I was seeing my job as like, okay, if I stay here, I will be able to predict everything that happens. Like nothing about my life is going to change. However, I had all of these dreams. Like I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that. And by staying in my job that I didn't like, I would kind of be like never giving those dreams a chance.
Yeah.
At like ever, like I would have automatically lost for those dreams. And so taking that big risk, I felt like it wasn't even that big of a risk, to be honest, but just taking that risk of doing a coding boot camp, I felt like I was giving like a chance at like these dreams of mine coming true. So it's like, if you want that kind of change, you have to put in a bit of risk into it. That's how you're going to get out of it.
Nice. Sorry, Philip, you had some questions you wanted to bring up?
Let me see.
There's a lot of questions.
We're really behind.
I'm just reading through some of them.
We're never gonna
Thank you
get
so
through
much,
this.
everyone, who is here. We have like 100 people watching, which is amazing.
Yeah. Maybe we should start talking about different lanes and what other options are there getting into IT other than just coding?
Okay. Yeah.
You ready for that one?
Sure. And we can kind of tie it into like some of the recruiter questions we're getting.
Okay.
Did either of you use a recruiter to find like your tech jobs?
No.
Lots of times, and then no,
okay.
and then yes, and then no, and so across 8 different roles, I'd say, of course, this is more of the US, but I'd say 5 out of the 8 were recruiters, and then 3 were not. Mm-hmm. Indeed was not, so that was a direct. Yeah, I'll let you talk about LaShawn because I think you got some stuff you want to talk about.
Okay.
Did you use it? You didn't use a recruiter, LaShawn.
No, I didn't.
I remember you were just like, gave everyone and their moms your resume.
I filled out over 250 job applications.
That's nuts.
And
I want to just preface that is not normal.
That's not normal. I was just overly determined.
Thing everywhere. Yes. Recruiters can help. Maybe this is a good way to answer it. Is from my experience, I've seen, especially if you're starting out, recruiters can help you get into the door, because if you've ever been to job sites where you just apply your resume to a whole bunch of them, you spam it out and you just wonder if someone will bite. Recruiters, I think, are helpful finding places that actually might fit you and would be willing to bring in somebody new. I've seen a lot of luck in that sense where they can help. Now, with that being said, it's not always guaranteed, and they do have their own like agendas or places they work with sometimes. So that I would not rely solely on them, I guess, is the alternative point. But I would say use them. Like if they're there, talk to recruiters, but also go look for the things that you're interested in. If you know a specific company you like, you should go directly to them, apply. I think the best thing is just to explore your options.
Yeah.
I have kind of a different point of view of that. I think recruiters, recruiters are not good and they're not bad. They're just like another tool. Right. I think if you are a junior developer and you're going for your first job, recruiters are not going to be very helpful for you.
I agree.
Really? And this is because
I agree.
Yeah. Because
like 3 people who got through recruiters.
I mean, what was their background? Like the other thing is like if you have a computer science degree, like that does make a difference.
They were unrelated, but that wasn't in Japan, to be fair, too.
Yeah. Okay. So in Japan, In Japan, if you are getting your first job as a developer, I would not go through a recruiter.
Okay.
We find that recruiters for our graduates typically just take up a lot of their time, and it gives them like a kind of a false sense of progress, because they're like, oh, I'm getting like meetings with people, and it's like, well, no, you're getting meetings with recruiters, and really what
Yes.
they want is they want to just add your name to their database,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, if you look at the economics, like for junior developers, it just doesn't make sense for recruiters because the salaries are not high enough for recruiters to like care much about it. Recruiters charge here about 30 to 40%. So if they just happen to have a junior developer role that they're searching for, like that's probably, they'd take probably a 30% cut. And so that's taken from the company. So if you are a company and you hire a recruiter for a job that, let's say, just for ease of math, 'cause I'm terrible at math. Let's say the salary for a senior software engineer or a software engineer the recruiter is looking for is like 10 million yen. That means the company is paying the recruiter an additional 3 million yen. So they're paying the person that they hired 10 million, and then the company is also paying the recruiter another 3 million, right? The 30%. And so if you think about like if you have a junior engineering role for like 5 million yen, the 30% of that is much lower. And then the recruiter themselves, they don't get the full 30%. They get like way less than that. Like most of it goes to the company. And so at the end of the day, they're not going to be making very much off of placing them. So, so I wouldn't go with a recruiter. Most companies also don't use recruiters for their junior engineering roles. They want to use recruiters when it's like a slightly more difficult role to fill. Like there's enough junior engineers bumming around that companies don't necessarily need to go through a recruiter. So
Sounds like it's a different experience. Interesting.
I just want to add
hearing the contrast.
Yeah. If you're job hunting with no experience, it's actually really terrible working with recruiters. The few, like, most of them weren't so bad, but there were a few who really got to me. They basically said my expectations were too high and I was never going to find a tech job unless I lowered them. And all I was asking for was like 4 million yen, which was only slightly higher than I was making as an English teacher. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to them because I ended up getting a job that paid even more than what I was initially asking for. Yeah. So you have to be really careful with recruiters because, like Yan said, their job is just to like get you to fill a position, and like whatever is best for you isn't necessarily what they care about or what they're focused on.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say is, and we've also had recruiters tell our graduates, like, you're never going to make that. And the thing to think about is that recruiters don't see everything. They only see the jobs that they are given to recruit for, right? And so if you're a company, you're only going to give a recruiter like the harder to place jobs. So the ones that typically you're looking for people with more experience, seniority, like speciality. So recruiters are not seeing the junior, like the entry level jobs, for sure. So they're going to be like, oh, I've never seen a job for like, a junior level engineer that's like paying 5 million yen. Like I've only got like senior engineers that are getting paid like 11 million yen. And it's like, no, that is also happening, but like there's another part of the market that you're not seeing. So it's not necessarily like, recruiters being bad or whatnot. It's just they have blind spots. They don't see everything. Oh, and someone asked, like, if you don't use a recruiter, how do you find a job? Job boards, like Japan Dev.
Yes.
And Indeed. And like, there's so many out there. Wantedly, there's tons. And so it's better to just apply through those. And even better is to see if you can find someone or make a connection with someone already working there. So I tell our graduates, like, if you're applying to a company like Indeed, go on LinkedIn, see if you can find someone like a mutual
hit up Philip
who's
on
working
Twitter.
There. Yeah, hit up Philip on Twitter. Like get comfortable cold emailing or cold messaging people. It's like one of the things that we teach at Code Crustless, which is like how to cold message someone.
But what is it actually like?
No, I was going to support that. Like,
What
it's
is it
kind of
like
a
being a
known thing
software
in the
dev?
industry that does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple of people want to know, like, okay, once you become a dev, what is your life actually like, right? On a day-to-day basis.
Ooh.
So the biggest question is, can I work from home? For me, that's 100% yes. Monday through Friday, I work from home from like 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. and it's great. Like, and that's every day for me. It's not like part-time remote. I have a full-time remote position. How about you, Philip and Yan?
Yeah. Every company is different in how they are, but overall, I would say it's one of the best working environments you can really have. Just for like a place that you go into the office every day. Um, like I'll give my specific one now as an example. So Indeed, there's a rock climbing wall. We have free lunches. We work on interesting projects, and you can go work with your teammates. Um, I don't work over 40 hours. In fact, we try to discourage people. So technically, I'm a manager, and I usually complain at people for working too long instead of working, not enough, which is really cool. People work based on effort typically instead of just hours at the keyboard, which I think is often a contrast where you're just sitting there doing meaningless work. Instead, this is more about like the actual work you're trying to produce and making sure that that's quality. And I think that's more consistent in the industry. Now, obviously, not every company is the same, right? And that's just talking about kind of an average. But yeah, I mean, the actual environment I'd say is pretty great. Like people are nice. A lot of people are really smart and happy to help out. Um, it's kind of hard just to say like as an average because every place does matter. And I think what's really important, and Ian mentioned this too when we were talking, your team does matter.
Yeah.
And so there are teams even within the company where you can have a terrible team and it's absolutely awful and your people are really terrible to work with, or you can have the world's best team and you're working out of Hawaii or something, and you're coding on a beach. Like you never know. Like, the contrast is very big. um yeah, and I work myself mostly from home.
Mm-hmm.
Been working from home for the last 2 years, and then I'm going into the office about once or twice a week, and that's just because I want to and I like to see my teammates, and I feel like that's a good thing whenever you actually want to go in, and see people and be a part of your work. I feel like that's a positive signal.
Yeah, and go ahead, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Okay. I was just gonna say, and your experience working from home can vary greatly depending on your position. Like I'm working as primarily as software engineer. Philip is working primarily as an engineer. So for me, at 9:30 in the morning, we have stand up. That lasts 15 minutes on a good day, 30 minutes when we kind of like digress a little bit.
Whoa,
and then
that's really long.
Most days, that's my only meeting. So from 9:30 in the morning to like 10 a.m. is like my only actual interaction with someone, through video. And then the rest of the day, I'm just kind of on my own coding unless I run into trouble and need to pair with someone or something. So it's really quite a huge shift from teaching English when you're face to face with someone all day. You have to be turned on all day, like smiling, happy, cheerful, super Genki. And then you switch to coding where everything's just very quiet. It's just you, your terminal, and you just kind of get lost in your thoughts and go a little crazy being at home, and you have to go out for a walk to get some fresh air. But the two work styles are just completely different. But for Philip, I imagine you're just in meetings all day long. You don't actually get to do much code, right?
I'm in a lot of meetings. Code kind of fluctuates. Like I do code reviews every day and such. Maybe I'll tell you what my last work day was like. So on Friday, I went into the office. I went to a stand-up, and then I went to 2 meetings around a design review, and then helping someone try to mentor them in their career and like how to get a promotion. So promotions are super common, like in our company, and it's something that's really cool because it's based on
it's something you never get as an English teacher. It's sad.
Yeah.
Promotions don't exist.
I've given out 11 promotions in 3 years. I feel like that's pretty good. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, I'm at work. I go do a cool design session. We're talking about building a new system, go talk with this other person. Then we all went and met and ate lunch together in like a big cafeteria. They have free lunches there. And then played ping pong for an hour with my teammates, which was pretty cool. And then just did some solo work, throw on headphones, get some stuff done. And then after around 4 p.m., we had a thing called demos where everyone can kind of present cool things that you do on your teams, like cool little code projects. And they have beers and drinks and stuff, and it's a really good time, and you get paid for it.
Yeah.
It's not nomikai afterwards, you know, it's while you're at work and you get to hang out and leave when you want.
Yeah, I would say so. I was a software engineer before the pandemic. So, yeah, and my team was not remote. I actually really loved being in the office. Like I made sure we had really flexible hours, like no one really cared, but usually we would have a meeting called a stand-up. LaShawn, yours is like really long. A stand-up is typically like 5 minutes max, and it's you with your like core team that you're working with.
I know my boss is watching. Don't put me on the spot yet, but he talks a lot.
But usually for a stand-up, they happen every day, and it's just you and your core team. So for me, it was like me and like 5 other people, and we just going around in a circle and we say what we're working on today, what we finished yesterday, and then also if we're stuck on anything or if we, need any help. And it's just to make sure that everything's on track, because when you're building software, you're building it together as a team. And so if there is like a deadline that you need to make, and someone's like behind or someone's struggling, like that means your entire team is going to be behind. So you want to do your best to communicate with each other on like what the current statuses of things are, and if you need help if you need help from other people. Yeah, I really liked being in the office. It was great as a, especially when I was first starting out, because if I got lost or if I got stuck, it would be just awesome to, grab a more senior software engineer, go into a room and just like whiteboard out right on the whiteboard, like our issues, like diagram things, like what leads into other things, etc. Also, I had to work with a designer working on front end things. And so it was really great just to have a designer, in like the table next to me where I could just go and like ask them about their thought process, like, how to do certain things, or like if they could change certain things. And that was really great. I would say, working as a software engineer, general professional, like if you want to move your career through, you're still going to need to be good at just like general professional things. So not only like, of course, being professional and like polite to colleagues, but also you need to be able to keep track of your successes and how you impact the team, the things that you work on. You need to be good at communicating, like, oh, I finished a thing, this is like what I did, communicating like the work that you are putting in. And then also having conversations with your managers and whatnot on, like, what does success look like? How can I get a promotion? What are the things that I need to do? How can I grow my career? And so like, certainly like, you can, it is a really chill job, like, for the most part, but if you want to move your career forward, you need to have those conversations. That's the same with like, any general career. I would say one of the big things that I was like surprised at working as a software engineer, were meetings. And I realized when I started that the coding part of it was like easier to get. And it was actually the meetings that no one had told me about and took a while for me to really understand what they were there for and how to like contribute to those meetings. So you basically have meetings to like discuss what's like the next stuff that you need to work on as a team. You have meetings to understand the pacing, basically the velocity that your team is working at, because you need to be working at a fairly predictable rate. Like a big part is being able to predict like how much work you can get done, so that like, all the other teams can like figure out, like when to release the software and like, et cetera. So when to like put out updates and things like that. And yeah, one of the things that they don't tell you is like, as a software engineer, you need to like understand the product. You need to know how to contribute, ask questions. Like a lot of the job is just like asking questions, that like the product manager isn't thinking about, and trying to figure out like what the long-term strategy is, because sometimes if you don't have a good understanding, you'll make like tech decisions that come back to bite you in the ass. That's called technical debt. So those are things that like my coding boot camp didn't tell me about. We do talk about it a bit at Code Chrysalis, just another plug. But yeah, I was just so focused on like, what's the tech that I need to know, that like, I didn't really realize that there's like more to the job than coding. And Philip can probably like talk even more about that.
Yeah, I'll try to
yeah.
do it really quick, but I want to add to what you're saying, because I think you brought up a really good point. Earlier when I mentioned there's a lot of people that code that aren't CS majors, I think majority of the people that I see that are really good, because there's a lot of people that can code, and then there's really great engineers, right? And what sets those people apart is that ability that's beyond just coding, but being able to explain what you're trying to solve and talking to people, right? People skills and thinking. Whenever you look inside the box and you're figuring out what's happening in this box, how do I make this thing run faster? But what is the box there for? Like thinking outside. Do I even need this box, or should we build a different one or hire someone else's? Thinking outside and trying to understand the bigger problem is really what I think makes a great engineer. And so those skills often you can learn in other industries, right? Like, and those will carry over and not be wasted.
Yeah, I would say like one of the other surprising things that I learned was that at a certain point, just going off of what Phil was talking about, your technical skills matter less, I would say. And it's more about like your ability to mentor, your ability to guide, your ability to ask really good questions. Like I remember noticing that like the more senior people on my engineering team weren't necessarily like the most technically capable. They were, however, they were people who were like in those meetings, they were the ones asking really great questions. Like they would ask a question, everyone would go quiet for like 2 minutes to think about what the answer was. And those were like the more senior engineers. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
There was a question around. Okay, yeah, we should probably answer some of these questions directly. I see, LaShawn, you're already killing this. Like you're rocking this. You want to answer any of these out loud?
Yeah, wow.
Sorry, I had to
Here,
mute
I'll
myself
take-
because I'm like frantically typing like on my keyboard,
Here,
and it's
I'll
so
answer
freaking
this
loud.
latest one to kick it
I haven't
off.
even been looking at the
Oh, there's
the
a
chat.
character
There
limit
was
to
a
my own
lot of
messages.
Coding-
Okay.
Okay,
there's
so
a
I've
lot
heard
of
the coding
stuff.
profession is incredibly competitive and you have to constantly learn new languages. Is this true, or is it case by case? It's kind of case by case. It depends on what area you're in, what you're trying to learn, how much you're trying to grow, and where you're happy. Because honestly, you could just do your job, go into work, do the same thing you do every day, right? Code the same stuff and leave. And if that job ever dies, or if you ever want anything more, you might be able to transition your skills, or you might have to learn whole new skill sets. So it's kind of it's case by case, I think, based on those things that I was mentioning though.
Yeah, I think what you have to keep doing is not learning new languages, but getting better at the things you already know and introducing yourself to the things you don't know yet, right? To the more complex topic like algorithms and whatnot. it's actually not good, I feel, to switch between languages too often, because then you'll never master one and be able to get to those really hard concepts, because you're always starting out at the beginning again, like how to declare a variable, how to iterate through something, you know? So I would say it's actually better, like, stick with 1 or 2 languages in the beginning and really like try to get good with those first.
Yeah.
I would say just stick with one language.
Stick with
just one.
Yeah.
But one is enough.
Would you choose JavaScript? If someone for one language.
Beginner language?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would choose JavaScript.
There you go. There's an easy, this is probably a really valuable thing from this stream, is we all just said JavaScript. So
and it's not
because, a little bit of background.
I just want to say JavaScript is not the best. And if you look on these job hunting boards, especially like I have Japan Dev open right now, you won't see JavaScript listed for most of them, but JavaScript is so fundamental to like front end development. You really need to know it. Like just having a good grasp of JavaScript, HTML, and CSS would be enough to like get your foot in the door, at least.
Yeah, I would say one
too, which is great.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
No, I was just going to give a little bit more background into why JavaScript. So just full disclosure, the language that we use at Code Chrysalis is JavaScript. We use JavaScript in English to teach. That's like what our curriculum is based off of. But I would say around 2013, there was a big debate between like Ruby versus JavaScript versus Python for software development. And Ruby was really popular amongst like the startup set. And it's in particular because of something called Rails, which is a framework built on top of Ruby. And Rails kind of like, it's really nice because you just enter a command and it poof, it like creates this thing for you. So if you're creating a startup and you need a web application up fast, like Ruby on Rails, so using the Rails framework was like a really fast way to like create a web app that you could really quickly hack on. So Ruby was really popular in like the Silicon Valley set. Ruby, by the way, is from Japan, actually. But a few things happened. And around like 2014, 2015, it became really clear that like if you wanted to go down the data science route, Python was the way to go. And then we saw a lot of companies moving away from Ruby and towards JavaScript in the Silicon Valley arena, or at least like if they were moving away from Ruby, it was to something like Scala. Kind of most notably, this happened with Twitter. So Twitter was kind of like famous for using Ruby on Rails, but then man, this goes into like a lot of random like historicals. Does anyone remember the Twitter, like the fail whale from Twitter? It's like when Twitter got really popular, it like wasn't able to keep up with all the requests. And so there was like this, okay. Do you remember that, Philip? Like this fail whale, like that page, this page that would show up if you tried to use Twitter at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was because like their services, the error page. And it was because their services were built on Ruby. And I don't want to go into like the reasons why them moving to JavaScript and Scala is better, but like that's what happened. And a lot of other companies kind of like followed forth. So JavaScript is also great because it is the language of the browser. So if you're doing anything, like if you want to like create anything that shows up on a browser, like JavaScript is the way to go. The browser doesn't read anything else. It doesn't read Java. It doesn't read Python. Oh, by the way, Java and JavaScript are not the same thing. They are very different languages. I used to think that they were the same thing. I didn't know that when I started.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I thought that Java was just shorthand for JavaScript, but they are very different languages. Anyhow, the browser only reads JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And so JavaScript is great because I think a lot of the the progress in like our browser experience, our internet experience, a lot of that comes from the innovations that happened through JavaScript. And so with JavaScript, it's easy to get started. You don't really need to download anything fancy on your computer. You just need a browser and you need a code editor, and code editors are free. Like Visual Studio Code is kind of like the popular one right now. So you just need to download a free application to help you write code, and you need a browser. So for most people, they already have half of that. And that's it. That's like all you need to set up JavaScript. And so it's really great for beginners because if any of you have tried to pick up any other languages like Python or Java or like any of the C languages, the setup, just like getting your computer set up to do that stuff can sometimes be just so grinding and annoying that you get frustrated before you even get started. So that's why like JavaScript is really great for beginners. And there's a lot of great free content out there to get you started. And then you can like build an entire career off of JavaScript because it is just such a ubiquitous language. You can find companies doing back end using JavaScript, front end using JavaScript, mobile using JavaScript, although I don't really recommend that. And you can use JavaScript for all kinds of things. It's also really great for personal projects because like Raspberry Pi, IoT type stuff, like they all use JavaScript. So it's just a really great language to get to hack on. Like you can just kind of do anything with it. And then of course, like there's tons of innovation that goes on in the JavaScript space just because it's such a popular language. So there's always new cool things that are happening up. So just JavaScript. Yay.
Yep. +1. Ditto.
Sorry, just to address like some of the job questions we're having. Someone asked a while back, what do you do when you look at a job board like Japan Dev or Tokyo Dev and you see these requirements, right? Not to pick on Mercari or anything, just to look at one. It says like mid-level or above. When you're just getting started, what do you do when every job position you see has this kind of requirement?
Oh, you just apply.
Stop applying to everything.
You just apply.
You sit there and say, well, I wish I could do that, right?
I know it doesn't sound like intuitive to apply to something if you don't meet all of the requirements, but to be honest, like half the requirements some of these jobs lists aren't even necessary. They aren't things you're going to even use once you start working there. Yes. And this is true for women especially. Women are less likely to apply for a job if they don't meet the written requirements, whereas men are like, screw it, I'm going to go for it anyway. So you're really kind of doing yourself a disservice by just limiting yourself to what you kind of meet the requirements for. Like when I was job hunting, I would look at this post, 0 years experience, mid-level. Yeah, I can do what a mid-level person does. It's more of fact, it's not about how much experience you have, like the duration of your experience, but do you feel you are capable of proving that you can do something as well as a mid-level career person?
Yeah.
Right.
It's the quality of those years.
Yes. You nailed it, LaShawn. Like that's very true. And I can personally attest to that. That's true from people that we've hired historically in the past across my companies. I myself, like in the first year, I switched to a second company of my career, and my second job was technically listed as 10 years of work experience. And
10 years.
I don't know how I got it. I mean, I feel like that was lucky, but it definitely was not the case. Like it just depends on if you can do this role, right? The worst thing is you don't get it, and then you're in the same spot, right?
Or you don't get the job you applied for, but you get a different job within the company, right?
Yes.
This happened to me.
That has definitely happened.
My company did not have a junior role. They were not looking for a junior developer. But the person who hired me was someone who had been following me on Twitter. He went and talked to the CEO and said, hey, let's give this person a shot. And they're like, I don't know. So they like gave me an interview and just, they gave me a chance to prove myself. And sometimes that's all it takes. Like find a company that's willing to allow you to prove yourself, even if you don't meet the requirements on their job posting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'd say the first job that I got, the job post, I think I mostly did not read it, but it said like something like 2 to 5 years of experience. And I had 0. I also, we've had stories of graduates apply to jobs and then, they were like, oh, that's actually for a senior role. You're a junior level, but we're just about to put out one. So like, let's get you that job instead. So we've had that a few times. I also, I remember I applied to a job when I was looking and I got immediately rejected. And then a friend of mine worked there but he wasn't on the engineering team, but this company did like happy hour Fridays, where they, anyone could get invited to go. So my friend was like, oh, why don't you just go to the happy hour with me and you'll get like free food. I wasn't working at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go for the free food. And I felt really awkward because they had just rejected me. But at the party, I met a software engineer and I was telling him about, hey, I just did this coding boot camp and I'm looking for work. And he was like, oh, you should apply to this company. And I was like, oh, I did, but I got rejected. And he was like, well, let me see. So he basically took my information. And the next day I got an email from HR being like, oh, we're so sorry. But we want to move you on to the next step. And the next step was really just a coding challenge, like an online coding test that I did. And I passed it. And so it just goes to show like, if you can do it, you can do it. And years or, not having a CS degree or whatever shouldn't necessarily stop you, or doesn't mean that you're not qualified, right?
So just to touch on what some of these roles are, because people have questions. What is a front-end developer? What is a back-end developer? What is a full-stack developer? Which one should I try to be? Which
should
one
I use
pays
my
the
restaurant
most?
analogy?
Yeah, I love the analogy. You should
Okay.
say it. This is my favorite one I've heard.
Because we see these all over the job boards, right? It's like software engineer, DevOps, Android engineer, full stack. What do these mean?
Yeah. So, you guys have probably heard this. Guys, girls, y'all probably heard this before. I do want to explain the difference between full stack, front end, back end, and I'll use it. I'll use a restaurant as an analogy for it. We use this at Code Chrysalis. I didn't come up with this, by the way. Our CTO did. So if you think of a restaurant, there's the front part of the restaurant and there's the back part of the restaurant. The front part of the restaurant is where customers come in. Usually there's like a host or a hostess greeting them, taking them to their seat, giving them water, giving them the menu, and then taking their order, right? So they take that order, and you can think of that entire dining room section. That's like kind of like the front end. And where, you're like interacting with the browser or interacting with like something that you're seeing. And so what happens is after that restaurant, after the waiter takes your order, they have to send it to the back end, to the kitchen, basically, in this case. So the sending part, taking the notes and then, or the, I don't know, what is it called? Like the tabs. Yeah, the order queues, and then putting them in the back end, that you can think of that as an API. So API, that's the API, how the front of the house communicates with the kitchen. And the kitchen would be thought of as kind of the back end. So this is where they're actually like making your food. They're getting in these requests and they're like getting stuff from the fridge, chopping it up, cooking it, etc. And then they pass the food back. So the back end can be thought of as like the back of the kitchen, right? Or sorry, not back of the kitchen, just the kitchen. So full stack is where you understand in a restaurant how the front works, how it communicates, and how the kitchen works. Like that's full stack. And so there are many configurations for a restaurant. And you can think of the different configurations as like different languages or different technologies. And so the front end is like the front of the house where you're talking to a customer and you're getting their stuff. The communication part is kind of like an API. And the kitchen area, that's like your back end. So in a software case, that would be like the database and all of those things. So yeah, when you talk about, I'm a front end engineer, they're talking about like being essentially in the restaurant case in the front of the restaurant, where they know how to deal with customers. They know, like, how to take money, how to, like, work like the cash register, and like they're like thinking about how to make the menus look nice and getting people to like actually come into the restaurant and sit down. And then back-end engineers are like kind of the people in the kitchen making the food. You need both for a good restaurant
Yes.
experience,
You
right?
can't not have good chefs and serve terrible food, and you can't make really good food and not serve it to not have any
Yeah.
servers.
Well, I mean, you can, like,
You can,
we've
but
seen
yeah.
we've seen restaurants that have like great food but terrible service, or like great service and terrible food, but we want to make good products. So that's kind of like full stack, front end, back end. And then when you think about the types of technologies, a lot of people will like when they think of that, when they think of like these different positions, they'll also focus on like, oh, what language is it? Like, what like technologies do we use? At Code Chrysalis, and just me in general, we like to think of it as like, you want to understand how things work first rather than learning the specifics. So it's kind of like if you're choosing a particular technology, you're kind of like learning how one particular setup of a restaurant might go. So for example, like a Japanese restaurant, like a sushi restaurant, let's be more specific, right? And so you like learn exactly how a sushi restaurant might be set up. So the front of the house, instead of a bunch of tables, maybe you have like just a bar counter, right? And in the back of the restaurant, maybe not no oven, but you've got like places to cut and prep and things like that. So that's like one particular configuration. However, if you're only learning that and you don't understand like the full fundamentals of a restaurant, if I take you and put you into a French restaurant, you might be really confused, right? There's like more tables, there's no bar area, there's like stoves and like ovens and like and shit like that, So in general, like the way that at least we're doing at Code Chrysalis is just getting people to understand the basics of a restaurant, or like the basics of like software, right? Where here's like generally how like the front end works. These are like the general things that need to happen. And here's the general things that need to happen in the back end. So when you're put into a very specific kitchen, you can kind of like figure your way around, right? Like, oh, like that's the front part and that's the back. And like, oh, instead of the I don't know, refrigerator being here, it's over there, and like here's the sink, right? And like, okay, that's where you like wash your dishes. I got really deep into that analogy, but that gives you like a general idea for full stack in the
Keep going, Ian. You got it.
idea like a restaurant.
So
usually a little bit more eloquent, but it is a Sunday night, so.
Ian, so do you want to like list out some of these that are being presented as
Oh God.
boxes?
Oh my God. How would AWS be in a restaurant setting? What would like AWS,
AWS.
Azure? I don't think that there's like a restaurant equivalent for that.
They're that person that stands at the front with the microphone. They're not like a waiter, and they're not like back staff, but they're communicating with someone. They do something important, but you have no idea what the hell they do.
AWS is like a company that sells kitchen products like stoves and equipment.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
Put it in your kitchen, and you're the person that builds those ovens and tools that everybody's gonna use, and if you mess it up, it'll break them all.
That's good. Yeah. It's really another company that makes stuff for you in the restaurant.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's take a look at a specific job posting, right? I think this is a good one.
Yeah.
It's for a human resources manager, right? So you don't have to be able to code, but let's look at this from someone who is a teacher. How could they take their experience and skills as like an English teacher in Japan and apply it to something like this job position here? What do you think? So for example, like this first bullet point, it says planning of organization and recruitment strategies to realize business strategies. What are your thoughts? And
I
this
was
might be a trick
typing a
question for
response to a
Philip because
question.
he hasn't
See,
taught English. But I know, like, for a lot of
let
people,
me read through it.
when you're an English teacher, right, you don't
Uh
just
huh.
teach. You do have to do like a lot of organization between yourself and the Japanese staff, like at your school, right? And it depends on if you're
Yep.
like at an Eikaiwa or if you're like an ALT. You always have to interact with staff. You always have to do some kind of planning for the schools, whether it's regarding the curriculum or it's regarding some upcoming events or like parties or something like that that you're going to be doing. Think about those events, that you've helped to organize at your school and how you help to facilitate that organization with the Japanese staff. What kind of communication tools did you use? What kind of organizational tools did you use? Did you do it in English or Japanese? And
What kind of things were you concerned about or had to keep an eye on?
yeah, how did you
Yeah. What questions
handle
did you ask?
things lost in translation or any kind of misunderstandings? How did you
Yeah.
yeah.
Honestly, I would say for any job, they want you to be a problem solver. That's like any
Mm-hmm.
job. So if you can prove that you identified a problem and you created a solution for it, like if you can communicate ways that you've done that in your previous life or in your current role, you just want to be coming up with as many examples of you solving problems as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think
I
about it
agree.
like
Mm-hmm.
they're selling, hey, we have this problem. In this case, it's, we want something around HR and being able to help out with HR management. And if you just list off, I know JavaScript, I know HTML, that's like cool, but why should I put you in this role? How are you going to help with that, right?
Yeah.
So you need to tailor it to like what problems are you solving in your current day that you feel like would give them confidence you could do well in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I handled lots of people challenges like X, Y, and Z, and I helped, set up a new office or something or a new course, right? Like maybe we did a new English teaching for a new grade, right? That takes a lot of work, takes a lot of coordination. That would show that you can build something like that and manage it.
Yeah. I just want to give an example. Take a look at this last bullet point they have, right? It talks about budget management, operations, budget preparation, performance management, and forecast preparation. If you're someone with an English teaching background, at first you might think, I haven't done anything related to that. I teach ABCs and colors to little children, But seriously, think about it. I worked as an Eikaiwa teacher for 6 or 7 years, and we often had seasonal parties that we had to do. And for those seasonal parties, you had to plan the schedule for the event, plan the budget for the materials, go out and purchase those materials, and manage the receipts, the payments, and everything. And then you had to advertise the event, and there's so much management involved that you don't really think about because you're working with little kids, but you actually are doing quite a lot of these things already in your current position, that you could kind of tie your skills into. So don't feel like that just because you've been teaching that you don't have any hireable skills. You have more than you might think, especially here in Japan. So I just thought this was a really cool post to point out. So
Yeah, for sure. I think also I would add put in any specific numbers that you might have, whether it's the number of grades that you had to teach, the number of people, the range of ages. It's really good to give some scale. And I would always do this activity with someone else. So have a friend interview you, because it's really hard to think of these things on your own.
Yeah.
Yes.
But have a friend push you to, come up with things, because it takes a little bit of finessing, and also just reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a really
I very
good
much
point.
agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so different saying it in front of someone than it is just thinking it in your head.
Yeah. Let's see. How are we doing on the questions? Are we caught up? I think we might be.
I think we're doing okay. I don't think we've technically answered What other positions are there other than code?
Yeah. What are some of the other IT related fields that you think would be easy to transition to?
I don't want to
Yeah.
use the word easy.
All right, not easy, but that are
It's because I
possible.
don't want to give, I don't want to
Yeah.
give people that impression. Like it is scary. It is work that you have to put in. There is an amount of risk. You're not going to be able to just like waltz into it. Like you have to put in effort. So, but there are lots of roles out there. I think just new ones always pop up. Like who would have known 5 years ago that like companies are looking for TikTok content creators, right? Like just mind
It's
boggling.
completely
Right.
new. It's true.
You know, so I think just like keeping track of like companies that you're also interested in and just like seeing their job pages is really good.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to like plus 1,000 that, because that's exactly what I was gonna say. Like, if you think, oh, cool company, I'm gonna use Indeed because I like that.
It is a cool company.
So if you go to like Indeed and look up the job postings they have, you can figure out everything that they have available for making a company work like that.
Oh crap! I
Right?
don't have
So
my
you can
my
see all the
Indeed tab
different
open.
tech ones.
Yeah. And
But yeah,
just
like any.
I'm gonna also like open this up so we can take a look at some of the companies. For anyone who's not familiar, Open Salary is a website where people
Yes.
can anonymously submit their salary information. So it's submitted by volunteers, might not be 100% accurate, but does give you like kind of a good starting point to understand like what kind of salaries are available, or you know what kind of salaries you could potentially make as a software developer in Japan. And it also breaks it down by experience, like whether you have 0 years of experience versus 5 years of experience. You can kind of see like what your salary forecast will be. So Philip's mentioning Indeed. Philip works at Indeed. I'm not going to say anything about Philip's salary.
They pay well.
Indeed pays
pay
damn well.
They do. I'll be very honest though. If people are like, "Oh, Philip works there. That sounds amazing. I want to go work for it." They are hard to get into. You have to prove yourself, and you can. But it is a hard company to get into first.
Yeah.
It's an intensive interview process, especially compared to other places. But it's worth it.
I like this site.
We have a grad working there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which cohort?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Cohort 4.
Okay.
It's like his second job.
So he has like a couple years under his belt.
Yeah. So he's got 2 years under his belt, I think.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember. No, 3 years. No, but he joined like I think last like over a year ago. I would say I want to touch on the kind of like the three. I mean, we're obviously talking about software engineers. I know that the other parts of like a development team are the product manager,
yes,
and UX, user experience. I would say for user experience, so UX roles in Japan, if you do not speak Japanese, it is going to be tough to get into them. And if you don't speak Japanese and you don't have experience at all. So I do know of companies looking for UX people who don't speak Japanese, but they're looking for like people at a more senior level. So managers and manager types, director levels. But yeah, I mean, a huge part of what UX designers or UX researchers do is just talk to people, like talk to the user and interview the user. You feel like most of the time, like they're just like talking, like and asking lots of questions. So if you're in Japan, like, your user is probably going to be Japanese. And so if you can't communicate with them, if you can't like pull information out of them, it's going to be quite hard. Product manager is like a more like a murky job to get into. I don't have any good. a lot of people just kind of, I find that a lot of the product managers I know either come from two directions. Either they were software engineers who like made a transition over, or they just like kind of stumbled into it. And Philip, I don't know if you have anything extra to add to that, but that typically those are like the two the two paths into product management that I've seen.
I think you are accurate, and that happens a lot. Like I see a lot of developers that switch to product management, or product managers that switch to developers. For getting into it, I might have some good thoughts here. So I have some different friends who've been trying to get into the field, and they honestly, they're just like, I don't know if I can code. I don't really feel confident. I went through it, and they're kind of struggling. And so there are the different fields. Maybe I'll touch on two of them. So the Ian was mentioning product manager, and then there's UX UI, and then there's also QA. And
Yep.
sometimes QA and product manager can be easier to get into in certain cases. So as a QA, what that is it's quality assurance, and you're basically testing and making sure that the code works that developers make.
Yeah.
So let's say you're making, let's use this page we're on right now, open salary. And when you click on one of those buttons, if you click on Rakuten, it should go and look at the Rakuten stuff. And if that doesn't work, that's bad, right? So if someone's changing a button, someone needs to make sure that doesn't break, because if it breaks and no one can do it, that's an issue. So they write tests around this that basically simulate, go click this button. Did the next page show up? Cool. Awesome. It works. And then you get paid for that. And so it's not often as hard because you're mostly just testing it from a user's perspective. And those are jobs in themselves. Like they need it to make sure that things work. And QA sometimes has entry-level jobs that they just need someone to get in there, because sometimes they'll just do manual testing where they need people to click buttons and make sure it works. And if you watch it, I know people personally, like I know a masseuse, like they worked like at Massage NB in the US, and they're like, oh, I wish I could get an IT. And so they went and they got a QA job, and they just jumped into it. And no experience, like no training, they just saw a job that was open and they were able to get in. So that's possible. And then the other one for product manager, there are actual things that you can do to get into it. So you can often apply your current experience towards this, because product management is the ability to maintain a project and help make sure it's successful. And so you can take almost any job and consider it if it were a project. Like, how did you make sure that everyone successfully learned English? You know, what did you do to organize people? Did you organize any events and coordinate? Did you have to talk to people at all? I'm sure the answer is always yes, right? You always have to talk to people.
Yeah.
And a product manager, you can list all that stuff out towards it. That's just your current experience. But there are also different certifications you can get. There's a PMP, which is project management P. I can't remember the other P in there. But there's that one, and then there's also a Scrum Master certification. And you can go get these things and take these courses, and they'll help you increase your odds to get into them. And so that gets you into the tech industry without necessarily being in coding. And that might be better. That might be more up your alley, and you could do that as a start and get in, and then start learning code and transition over that way. Or same with QA.
Yeah. And if you are someone who wants to, like, you know, make the transition to working from home, that could be a really good option. Like, I'm on Indeed's website where Philip works. So if there are any problems, we blame Philip. But I just typed in QA tester here in Indeed.
I'm not a QA tester.
With the city, you know, set to Tokyo, and right away PayPay pops up. You know, PayPay is huge in Japan. And you can see here, it says at least 3 years of QA engineer experience. Doesn't matter. Apply anyway. Give it a shot.
Right.
They either will interview you or they won't. Yeah.
Let me personally just throw it in there. Like, I've seen it because across companies I've worked, sometimes there's just a need, and then you just need someone to help with this. And it doesn't matter if you're like working at McDonald's, like, please, just, we need a person.
Hmm.
So it doesn't hurt to apply.
For some of these positions, like Yan kind of mentioned, like UX, UI, you will need some level of Japanese because you are going to be, speaking directly to either users or some of the developers. So for example, you can see that this post here, I should probably make it a little bigger for everyone. It does require, like, it says business level, but I find these jobs don't actually care if you have the JLPT certificate to prove it. You just need to be able to prove yourself, like, during the interview. But if you have the JLP, of course, like, put it on your resume is always, like, nice to have. So yeah, I would recommend, like, if you don't see anything on, like, some of these job boards like Japan Dev or Tokyo Dev, go over to Indeed and just, search for Tokyo, because that seems to be easier for finding remote work because everyone posts under Tokyo. So it doesn't matter if you're like in Osaka or like Hokkaido, just search under the Tokyo area for what kind of position you're interested in. And you're going to find remote jobs like this, where it says like WFA, work from anywhere, or WFH, work from home. Okay, any other jobs you guys can think of?
Yeah, there's like content strategist.
Yeah.
So that's like it's been around for a while, but I think it's gotten a lot more popular. Like I've been seeing more job posts related to that. And I mean, a lot of the job is basically like, like sometimes when you click on something on a website and you get like an error message that makes no sense. So that's because they don't have a content strategist. So that's like what you do as a content strategist. So it's pretty cool that that's like a separate job. Usually companies that have that will be larger companies. So like the Googles, the Indeeds, the Amazons will absolutely have content strategists. Smaller companies probably won't have that. It's like a luxury position, I would say. That companies would spend on. Yeah.
And it looks like they pay pretty well. Like I just typed this in, content strategist, the yearly salary is between 6 million to almost 8.5 million yen, and it requires absolutely no coding. So that's pretty awesome.
Oh, an honorable mention might be a business analyst. It kind of blurs that boundary between technical and non-technical. And in the technical world, it's like the predecessor to product manager. So sometimes they have those listed. Business analyst could be a way to get into the door and start. And then, you can kind of switch over from there, or at least learn the environment.
Yeah, that also looks really awesome.
It can, yeah. And sometimes it's like you could just be doing data entry. It could be boring, but it's a step, right? Like, and you're in the door. Or it can be you're actually solving problems on the page and you're building out the content you see like in this page itself and helping like make those decisions for what shows up.
That's another great one. It looks like as long as you have a degree, they don't actually care like what your degree is in. You just need a degree for the visa.
Yeah. Ebony Brown asked, what about IT managers? So, yeah, the usage of the word IT in Japan is very confusing. It could really be anything. So
anything with a computer.
Yeah. So it's like for instances like those, I would just take a look at the job description because it might be totally different from what I have in mind. So yeah, I would say just like read the job description. Like so many terms are just thrown around. IT engineer, like what does that do? Systems engineer, I don't know what that does. Like programmer, systems programmer. There are just so many different types of jobs, and they're not necessarily software engineering. They might be something different. Maybe it's something that you like. So I would just take a look at the job descriptions for those.
We lost Philip. I hope everyone's okay. We're going strong
I'm
for
still
like
here.
2 hours now without a break. Are you guys okay?
I got my dog. I'm good.
All right. Yeah.
He's
For anyone
like on my lap.
Hi, Potato.
My camera
He's
just
so
turned
cute.
off.
For anyone
go.
who's joining late, don't worry if you missed anything. You will be able to view this video again later on this channel. It'll be posted like shortly after the live stream's over. So go back, watch it. If you have more questions, you can either like leave it in a comment in this video or just message us directly on Twitter. Like all three of us are pretty active there, even though Philip seems like he's not. He's there. And yeah, we'll be glad to help you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Yeah, Sachiko said she's been working 6 years as a project manager. It's the first time she heard there's a qualification for it. So that could be good to have. And the salaries for project managers in Japan are pretty good, it seems. Like you could definitely like make over 6 million a year.
I feel like project manager can be quite a general role. Like it could be lots of different things. So yeah, really curious what kind of project management it is. We have project managers too at Code Chrysalis, but I think that's a different thing.
I don't know if anyone's still awake and interested in this or not, but I made a little slide to share my salary history in Japan. So this is probably something a lot of people can relate to. And that's just how low the salaries are and how they don't really change even as your experience goes up as an English teacher. There's really no mobility there. Like I first came in 2011. I was making about 220,000 yen. I believe that was before taxes. So my take-home pay was even less. I was living in a tiny Leo Palace apartment that shook every night from all the aftershocks from, the Great Tohoku earthquake. It was not a good time.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Sounds terrifying.
So the next year I moved from Tochigi to Kanagawa and my pay bumped up by 60,000 yen. I thought, this is great. I'm making much more. I'm living in a better location. Things are just going to get better from here. Things are going to go up and up and up. I've got a good career. This was when the yen was much stronger than the dollar. And so life was good at that point. I could send money home, pay on my student loans. But 7 years later, and my pay barely even changed. And in fact, it went down. I got tired of singing, to singing the ABC song and teaching colors and everything. I was like losing my mind after doing it for 7 years. So I thought, I'm going to become a university teacher and teach adults. But that paid less than teaching kindergartners, which is the opposite of what you would think, right? You will make more teaching a room of 6 kindergartners than you will teaching a room of 40 adults. It's unbelievable. But that's how it is in Japan. So then my first job as a software engineer, like when I was hired, I started out at 425,000. Like compared to my first year in Japan, like it was double the salary. And I was just like, okay, I'm good. I'm happy. Life is good. I'm set. And then November, I got my first raise. Earlier this year, I think I got another raise. And this month, I got like my third raise. So like 3 raises my first year, it bumped me up to 541,000.
It's because you're awesome, LaShawn.
Sachiko is asking like, what about freelancing? What about side projects? I do agree with Yang. Freelancing isn't something you should do right out the gate. It is better to work with a group of more experienced engineers and learn as much as possible from them as you can. You're going to learn a lot in bootcamp. You're going to learn even more once you're actually coding and getting your code reviewed very, very harshly.
I know where this is going.
Philip, he saw my find a code.
Yes.
He was like, LaShawn. Yeah. But you have to be open to those sort of things because you'll learn so much. Then you should maybe start thinking about trying out some side projects creating your own app and publishing things. So like right now, my side project is bringing in like 150,000 yen on the side. So like every month.
Nice.
It might go up, it might go down. It's my side project, right? So for now, I'm enjoying that small bump in income. So between like my full-time job, 1 year as a software engineer, plus the coding side projects that I've done, and these are projects I've created myself. I didn't wait for someone to hire me to do them. These are things I wanted to do, and I just went ahead and did them because I could. And people like them, right? So currently, this is just to give you an idea of what you can make. Some people will make more. Some people will make less. I think I'm kind of in the median, somewhere in the middle for people who started around the same time as me. I'm making 692,000 yen per month right now. So with about 8.3 million yen. And
you're about a year out, right?
Yeah, I just passed my 1 year mark in April. So if you want a realistic idea, I think this is is pretty accurate. And if you take a look at
that's pretty realistic. That's what we're
LaShawn,
seeing generally with
is this
graduates.
the cap? Like, have you reached the end of your career?
Not until I make it to Indeed, Philip.
Right.
I'm kidding. I'm not leaving my job. I love my job because they give me like I don't have all these. No, really, I don't have all the crazy meetings that Philip has. Just those meetings aren't for everyone. I like to just sit in my own zone, coding, creating things, pairing up with people when I need help. It's so nice not having someone micromanaging me. It's like such a huge like improvement to my quality of life. So I'm kind of stuck. I have to choose like stay where I am and enjoy this freedom that I have, or do the crazy meeting schedule and stuff like Philip at like a bigger company like Indeed.
Well, that's just because I'm a manager. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, managers are different from software engineers.
Yeah. So like the engineers on my team have between 1 to like 3 meetings a day versus like I do a bunch of them. That's just because I do it for them though, like so that way I can give them that so they don't have to. Right.
But you say
she just asked a great question.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you like your boss's job?
Well, to be fair,
you're in a really small company.
I'm in a really tiny company. There's only like maybe 6 engineers now, and there were only 3 of us when I started. So my boss and I were doing the same job, kind of. Like we're working on the same things, just different parts of the same thing. So yeah, I would say I do like my boss's job. He has the kind of lifestyle I would enjoy having, and that I am like getting there. Like so, yeah. Do you, Philip?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's why I kind of am in the role I'm in now, and I would love to have my boss's job.
A lot of people are getting tired. Do we have any other questions? Thank you, Story Style, for joining us. We got your name right.
Just like some more salary information. I think there's multiple ways that you can get into tech. We want to aim, like at Code Process, we want to aim for the LaShawn story, which is a quality jump into tech. Because there are a lot of tech roles out there, a lot of like coding jobs that are not quality. And they don't pay very well. Like there's not like good, career ladder going up. But they're kind of like, like dead end English teaching jobs, just instead of teaching English or coding. So we really want to focus people on getting into these like jobs that are good, right? Like the one like LaShawn has. So for those jobs, they are harder to get, right? And they do require knowledge going in. But it is well worth making that effort. And you can do it by going through a boot camp or self-study or whatever, but making that effort is totally worth it, because when you're getting one of those jobs, you are just able to lock yourself into a career better and find stability faster, and just feel good about what you're doing. I would say on average, our graduates are like the first job out, given that it's COVID, it's probably anywhere from like 4.5 to 6 million yen per year is kind of like the typical first year salary that people would get. But then after, like, 2-3 years out, we see bumps in people's pay.
Yeah.
So it is not uncommon to see people double their salaries after, like 2-3 years out of Code Chrysalis. So going from making like 5 to making a 10, or going from 5 to 8 or 5 to 9. That's pretty typical. And that usually happens in either like they get a promotion, and they push for a promotion at work, or they switch to another company that pays even more. So definitely, we definitely see that happening, and it's really cool to be able to see like our graduates make it through like the tech chain. It also helps us because it's nice to be like, we have a grad who's like now an engineering lead at that company, so like just send your resume over to them. So that's also pretty cool. But I would say, yeah, we I like to think of coding boot camps as like, we show you the best path up a mountain. If you think of like the heralded like software engineering job at the top of the mountain, we'll show you the best way up, but you still have to do it on your own, right? So we'll give you the tools that you need. We'll like, coach you and help you, but like you need to climb that up on your own, and we're with you, the way there. It is an expensive program. Thanks, LaShawn, for pulling that up. We are 1.32 million yen. But if you think about just your earnings, your lifetime earnings after taking it, I mean, like just looking at LaShawn's numbers, she's made that money back just in 1 year, right? That she's paid for.
Yeah.
So think about like the career.
It is really nice because like Code Chrysalis does have multiple payment options. I know 1.3 million yen is an impossible amount for most people working here, as a teaching or other career. So if it's something you're interested in, but the price is what's stopping you, reach out and talk to Code Chrysalis and see like which one of their payment options will work for you. Personally, I think I paid mine off after 8 installments, but they gave me like several months after graduating before I had to start paying. So I had time to do the job hunting, find my job, start working. And like the first paycheck generally isn't at like as big as your future ones are going to be, just because you only get paid once a month and you're probably going to be starting like sometime in the middle of the month. So yeah, don't let the cost of the course deter you from like starting to learn how to code. If you feel like joining a boot camp or like, some kind of coding course, like they have Foundations Light that you can do online. Yeah, don't let the price scare you.
So kind of I know we have a question that got triple bumped, but I'll just kind of wrap that part up. So next steps from after here, like, you've listened to this, you feel inspired and you're like, cool. And then you just go back to your regular everyday job, but how can you actually change it tomorrow, right? To this, the first steps we're talking about is go try code, right? Just to reiterate, go use Code Academy or Udemy or something. I personally would say just go try something that's free or cheap first, just to get a taste, just enough to know what it is, how do you like it, and then after you've done a little bit and you're thinking, oh, this is interesting, or I know I want to switch from English teaching into tech, I'll do whatever it takes, right? Like once you reach the point where and you want to invest, that's like where I would say, sign up for Code Chrysalis or something, or like get that more dedicated thing that's going to help you get in the door, right? So I think those are kind of the steps, is just try it tonight, try it tomorrow morning, try go looking at code and just build something really small. See if you can put text on a screen or whatever, right? Like just the bare bones thing. Just see how you feel.
Yeah. And like also, the reason we say just try it isn't to see if you're smart enough to code. You don't have to be smart enough to do it. Everyone is smart enough to code. Some people are more skilled than others, but you don't have to be like super amazing, at programming in order to be useful in coding. Like I made Find a Doc my first year, and I wasn't that experienced. I wasn't the best, but I made something that helped a lot of people. So what we're telling you to do is just try it and see if it's something you feel like you can stick with long enough for however long it's going to take you, like 1 year, 2 years. Like, is it something you can see yourself doing without getting too pissed off? Because coding is frustrating. It's basically about always facing these challenges and puzzles and trying to figure out how to solve them without breaking your keyboard. Can you do it successfully? If so, then yeah.
It's so exciting. Like, that feeling where you've solved something hard. A lot of times games do this too, where you fought this boss, you're playing Dark Souls or something, and you fight the boss and you've died like 20 times, and then you're like, yes, I finally beat it, and you stand up and you're like, woo.
Yeah.
That feeling is what I get from code every time I solve a problem on like a smaller scale. And then when it's finally built, it's amazing, right?
But then it's also like you exit the boss room and the tiniest enemy just one-shots you and kills you because you were off guard. That'll happen with code. You're like, yes, I did it. And then your test failed because you've introduced a bug. You're like, damn it.
Yep.
It's like coding is like someone described it to me as a never-ending parade of error messages.
Yes.
You know you are making progress when the error message changes.
Yeah.
I thought that was so great.
That is my life at work as a programmer. Sitting and staring at red error messages and trying to at least get them to change to something better, something at least closer to a solution. So,
yeah, like the default you get with coding is like something doesn't work. So you start with like a fail.
Yeah.
And you have to make it green. You have to make it a success.
Amy asked a really great question. So other than looking at salaries, how do you prevent yourself from getting into a black company? Black companies are notorious in Japan. They're companies that overwork their workers, like obscenely long overtime hours, little to no benefits, really poor pay for the amount of work that you put in. What are some red flags to look out for when job hunting to avoid those kind of companies?
All of those things you said.
But how do you know?
I wrote down my answer, which is look at the interview process, not just a time for the company to evaluate you, but for you to evaluate the company.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah. Do they give you time to ask questions to them? Do they seem irritated when you're asking those questions? Or are they like really open to them? Yeah.
A good company expects you to ask questions about that company.
Yeah, that's true.
And you actually said this before, right? Like reach out, do a cold call.
Yep, that as well. Reach out to people who work there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you reached out, think about if you're on the flip side and you were working at one of those, someone says, hey, is that a safe place to work? Is this a black company and it's going to be terrible? What would you say, right? You'd probably be like, yes, please stay away. Like, save yourself.
Well, so what would you ask? Like, what are some good questions to ask someone if you see they're working for a company you're interested in? If you want to gauge if that's a company you really feel, is a good match for you or not.
Describe an average day.
Mm-hmm. I would say,
that's like an easy
how
one.
Many vacation days do you have? And do they give you shit for taking them?
Yeah, it depends on when in the interview process I would ask that. If you're asking that too early in the process, it could look like that's all you really care about.
Oh, yeah.
And it also depends on who you ask. So if you're asking like the hiring manager that, like I would not.
I wouldn't ask the manager directly, no.
Yeah, you would ask something like the HR person about that towards the end, like when you know that they want you and they like you.
Mm-hmm.
But that question that I had previously, like describe your regular day, like you can ask that to one of the software engineers interviewing you, and or something like, what do you like the most about this company and what do you dislike the most about this company? Like just asking them what their life is like, generally, like it'll come out if like the company is not the place for you.
Yeah.
King Niza mentioned dad previously worked as a programmer and it was really tough and lots of overtime. And I think that I do want to address that kind of perspective, because I think that's true. And there was a lot of things that used to exist in programming and software development in the past that has changed, especially in the recent like 10 years. Software is big. It's the main thing now. Like we used to have to build a lot of hardware because things didn't exist, but now your phone can do everything you want. We just need more apps that can solve those problems, right?
Yeah.
And so things are turning into software being a really big demand, and there's not enough. And so the market is honestly amazing, where you can go and swap to a different company if you're bored with your company. And that concept is not available in every industry, right? You can't always just say, I want to work on something different, or, I'd love some more compensation or whatever, right? Like more PTO. And a lot of them, you can't just go out the door and look for another place and then swap and it's easy. But software you can, because there's such a demand for this. And because that demand exists, at least this is my perspective on it, I think that has driven a lot of these companies to make the environment more alluring or tempting for people to join. So like all of the big companies that you think of, all these tech ones, right? Like their offices and environments. I'm going to use my own as an example. I have a rock climbing wall at my workplace and I get free lunches, and there's like a gym on site and ping pong tables, and we have ping pong tournaments. It's like those things are kind of ridiculous. They're not even related to the cool work that I'm doing, but those are there to try to make it better and for people to have an enjoyable workplace, so that way they can keep them there, right? Like if you enjoy your work and you want to go there, that means people will join. And I think that that's really cool, and it's different from how it used to be, right? Like I think that this is a big change in the industry.
Amy wants to know, like, basically, is it frowned upon to job hunt in Japan? Not job hunt, job hop in Japan. Is it okay to switch between companies, say after 1 or 2 years, or is that like frowned upon?
Okay, Yan. Let's see if we have the same thoughts on this. Guys,
If
I don't
you're,
know.
oh, yours is I don't know. So I think if it's a
Well,
good
I have my thought, but I didn't
Oh,
know if we're
okay.
gonna match.
I would say it depends on the company that, yeah, it depends on the company. I would say generally, if it's a company that knows what it's doing, that has a good software engineering team, it's not going to be seen as a bad thing. And so, when I see people that have gone and worked at different places for like, let's say like 2 years at a time, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be good. Usually it means like, hey, they probably have lots of experience. Like they've seen a lot of different things. And so that might be really interesting. So I don't know. I think like at the end of the day, it really depends on how you present yourself, how you talk about your experiences, whether you're leaving on good terms versus bad, and whether I think it makes sense for your career, right? Just how are you telling that story when you're going to another company? Yeah.
I also think it should be pointed out that some software companies don't last long, so you don't have a choice but to job hop, right? You could work for a startup and it might very well fail after a year or two, and you're going to be looking for another job again. And I think like a lot of companies understand that things just don't pan out. It's no fault of, it's no fault on you. That's just how the industry is. So I think tech companies, even Japanese tech companies, are probably more open to seeing people who have, only a couple years of experience, at one company before they move on to the next.
So I mentioned before, I see about 10 candidates a week for interviews, and see a range everything from 6 months to like 6 years for when people change jobs. I'd say the average that I usually see is about
6 months. Wow.
2 years.
Yeah.
I'd say 2 years is about the average. 4 is on good places, and then 2 is like where they're still like wanting to explore around. And under that is kind of like something happened, right? And usually it's case by case, and it's okay. Like LaShawn's example, a lot of times companies go under or they're not doing well or something, and that's usually understandable as long as it's not a problem with the person being hired, right? And a lot of it's how you portray that. But yeah, it's totally okay. I think the answer is yes. It's fine. People switch around. I mean, I'm a personal example. I worked at 8 different companies,
Yeah.
and I switched about every year to 2 years.
So wait, we talked about red flags from companies, but what about red flags from job applicants? What are some things you've seen, both of you, as like, you know, as people in hiring positions? What are some red flags you've seen on resumes that keep cropping up that people should be aware of, that to make sure they're not making those mistakes?
Oh man, LaShawn, that's like another entire thing. I could just go on and on. Yeah. Phil, if you want to start, or
yeah, I'll just throw out like 5, and I'm trying not to talk too much about them. Okay. Number 1 is like, just, are you abrasive? You might think that that's obvious. Don't go into an interview and say like, why are you asking me this question? That's stupid. Don't say that. If you do, you usually don't get hired. Like, people say that. They go in there and like, this is dumb. I don't really like this process, so I'm not going to answer this.
Yes, don't be an ass.
Yeah. So that's number 1. That should be obvious. Second one is if you're moving jobs really frequently, or if you left really quickly, there needs to be a reason. If that reason is okay, then it's fine. But it's a flag, and it's always going to be talked about. So just be sure you can explain it in a positive way, that you're not talking bad about your company and it's not a you problem, right? Like, oh, they wanted to go a different direction, or I don't know, whatever. I mean, just that's the second thing to think about. Third one is being able to get along with people and showing that you're a good team player. So that's like something that we look for, is like, how well are you communicating? How well are you getting along? If you remember earlier, we talked about a regular developer versus a great developer. And it's that skill of being able to communicate what you do and not just code. Yeah. If we see the opposite of that, where there's red flags around like that, where you're going to make the environment hell for your teammates, right? That's a red flag. That's the opposite direction. So be sure that you sound friendly. Be sure that you are friendly. Like, be nice to people. Yeah, and that's just something that's common to look for. I'll stop there. I think that's a good ground.
Nice. Yeah, that was pretty good. What are some of your red flags you've seen? Yeah.
I'll just focus on one part of it, which is resumes. So red flags and resumes. If you're not able to, if your resume 1 just looks really bad, like no attention to detail, no like really thought into how it looks, that's a bit of a red flag. The second one is I think not having a clear theme or a clear story in your resume. Like if you're just putting down every position that you've ever had and like just putting down whatever, that's not good. I think even if you've had lots of different positions, when you're applying to a job, you want to calibrate each description or like the accomplishments that you've done in each one, so that it drives a particular story about like, I have these skills that I'm pushing, that I'm going to apply to this job that I'm applying to. The third one I would say is making your resume sound more like a bunch of job descriptions rather than your accomplishments. So I really don't like it when I see resumes saying like responsible for doing this, or like, communicate with these teams to like do that.
Oh, I'm guilty of some of those.
Wait,
damn it,
LaShawn, you didn't listen to us during our resume portion.
I did. I was just in a rush.
Dear, that's why you have to send out like 250 of them. So I'm kidding. Let
me get my tissues. It's gonna make me cry.
So don't have it be a job description. Think actively about what accomplishments you had. Fourth one, I would say just not having good, clear descriptions for things, like not being succinct. So if it's like really difficult for me to pick out exactly what you did in each job, like that's no good. Also, I would say just not a red flag, but a general tip for people is if you've gotten all of those down, if your resume looks good otherwise, my big tip is add in like an interests and hobbies section, just like short one liner, and make it interesting, because oftentimes resumes will be like kind of, like if
Bland.
if you're reading a lot of them, you can get kind of bland.
Mm.
You can feel like they're kind of bland. So make sure that you add in a little section on your hobbies or interests and be specific. So don't put in like cooking, running, reading. Like, don't say those things. You want to be really, really specific. So if it's cooking, say something very particular, like trying out new French recipes or whatever. If it's reading, put in the a book that you really like. Be specific about stuff. If it's a game, put in a particular game, like, I don't know, World of Warcraft or whatever the kids are playing these days.
No one's playing that anymore. Blizzard's been canceled.
Oh shit. Okay. All right.
Like,
The one with the farms, Farmville. Am I still off? I'm not a gamer.
Doppel says they want to
yeah.
see my resume. I am open to sharing my resume. I haven't prepared it for the stream, so I don't want to flash my address and everything out there.
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, if Philip and Yan are up for another live stream sometime, I can like blot out my personal info and we can go over it. I know, Yan, you did something like that in the past where
Animal Crossing.
Didn't you have a video
yeah.
where you reviewed some resumes for tech positions?
We did. I know. Yeah, we did. There's one that I did with another YouTuber. And then we filmed one at Code Chrysalis, but I think like it just never got edited. I need to check in on that. But I love looking at resumes and picking them apart. So if you want to set that up, I'm happy to like dive in and like give you my my opinion on resumes. Resumes are really hard because they have to appeal to many different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So when you're applying to a job, it's got to appeal to the recruiter who doesn't have a tech background. It's got to appeal to the hiring manager. It's got to appeal to software engineers that might be looking at it. So it's like, it's a short PDF thing that you're giving them. It's like a one pager, but you've got to spend time to calibrate it as best as you can so that it makes everyone looking at it happy.
Yeah.
Oh, and also ATSs, like the robots. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone was asking
one
like
thing that I would maybe say real quick.
Yeah.
One thing that I would maybe say is just ask yourself this question. If you were hiring yourself and looking at your own resume, and you said, okay, you worked at this last place. What did you do there that would convince me to work at my company?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
What did you do there?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't just say like skills, JavaScript, CSS, HTML. Like, okay, cool. I'm not convinced that, you would work great here.
Yeah.
But if you said like, well, I successfully launched a really cool product and we made billions of dollars and we were amazing. We all did it with 2 people. I'm like, okay, well now I'm interested. I don't know how you made billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of ties into what Yan was saying. Like, different people viewing your resume are going to be interested in different things, right? Like the hiring manager probably has no idea about coding whatsoever. And someone asks like, so what do you put on your resume? Well, for me, personally, I had my team projects from Code Chrysalis on my resume. And that was really nice because hiring managers could look at them. They were online. They could click through the web apps that we created. And they're like, oh, this is cool. They could just click around, see how it worked, got a feel for it. And so, okay, this is someone who has at least published something. They show that they have some coding skills, and then they move you on to the next person interview process. So then maybe you're interviewing with a developer.
And you've proved that you've worked on a team before.
Yeah.
Because like that's the other thing that's nice about doing a coding bootcamp. When you're self-studying, you don't get that team environment.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the learning comes from working on a code base with a bunch of other people, because you have to like deal with these things called merge conflicts,
Yeah.
And you got to pick up things like rebasing and stuff like that. That is much harder for you to do on your own.
I don't think I've ever told anyone this. There was this one company I applied to. It was an American company. I made it through the first round with the HR person. She liked my project. And then I was supposed to interview with the lead developer. And so usually with the lead developer, you kind of walk through your code base and kind of go over it a bit, what specific parts of the project you were responsible for like creating or helping to develop. This guy went into my project right before my interview and he posted something really obscene in there because he was ready to catch me during the interview, pulling it up, like opening it. It was graphic. It involved a part of the female body that had nothing to do with cooking recipes, which was what my project was about. And so we were like going through an interview. It's like, yeah, and I can show you this coding project I have. And he's like, oh, you're going to show me something. And the way he said it was like kind of strange. Like, why is he grinning like that? So I wasn't sharing my screen, but I went to pull it up and I just saw this fake recipe. I was like, shit, what is this crap? So be careful. Make sure your coding projects are not only good, but make sure that the people who are viewing them can't like sabotage them in some way. So if you're going between these interviews, check your projects each time. Someone might try to troll you. If it's something where anyone could submit something to your project, like we had a database. You remember our Nihon's Kitchen database? Make sure no one's like fiddling with your projects before your next interview. Make sure it's clean. There's a clean slate. Maybe do a rollback if necessary. But yeah, I just remembered that story.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's a rare occurrence, I would say. I haven't heard
Amy,
of that
the
happening.
interview
That's too
ended
bad.
right after that. I was just like, what the hell? I didn't know what to say.
Well,
Wow.
I just like,
Well, you know where to not work.
yeah,
I mean,
I
Yeah,
dodged.
there you go.
Talking
You know, the
about
red
black
flags,
companies,
that's
that was a
fine.
bullet because, you know, Americans, you got to dodge bullets. It's terrible. I dodged the bullet.
Oh, no.
I really did.
Yeah, we're good at that as Americans, huh?
I didn't want to like show him after that because I knew he did it. And so he was like, well, oh, I guess,
That's
you know,
screwed up, though.
maybe we should end here. And I'm like, yeah, I think we should
disappointed
end.
hearing that.
Yeah. There's some screwed up people
So
out there.
going back on a more positive note,
Yeah.
the resume part and having like your evidence, like you were showing, like here's a cool site I made, or here's some good examples. We do look at those.
They do.
And they
Yeah.
do have an influence. So if you have, this is specific to coding now and getting your first job, because I'm going to use this because I've seen this help people get their first role. If you have a GitHub account and you make cool projects and you can demo those really easily, like with a click of a button on your resume or something, where they can just click, see that you built something and check out the code.
Yep.
That is worth 1,000 words. Like, it's really, really awesome because you're showing you have no experience, but I wrote this code. This is mine. I'm working on it. That shows that you're willing to learn and you're trying to grow and that you can do something. And yeah, it's going to give you leverage over someone else who's applying that hasn't proved anything or hasn't shown that they can code at all, and they just say they can.
And even when you're working solo, take those coding exercises that you're working on through Khan Academy, Code Academy. Learn how to, you know, then push those to get. You want to get some experience using GitHub. You want to get in the habit of using it like almost on a daily basis. Because in the beginning, that's the only real way you have to show that you have some kind of experience and that you are active, right? At least people can look at your GitHub activity and see, okay, this person has been pushing code 4 days a week at least, right? So they are actively learning. They are actively studying and working on code.
Should we maybe end it? Oh, Philip's gone.
My camera's shutting off for some reason after like an hour. I don't know why.
Yeah. Any last questions before we go?
Yeah, I gotta get up early tomorrow.
Ferris says
I'm getting
my tissues
tired.
can be Ichiman and Bills. No, I'm still using the cheap stuff. Saving for a house.
Ooh, it's exciting.
Yeah. All right.
All
Yeah.
right.
I guess everyone's getting
I
tired.
don't see any new ones.
Thank you so much, everyone,
Thanks,
for joining
everyone.
us. Any closing
Yeah.
words from Philip and Yan?
Thanks, LaShawn, for setting this up. This was really exciting. Like, it was fun to do this, and it's always great to help people get a better life, right? Like, getting a new job is a big part of it.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much to everyone who joined. Thank you, Yan. I know you are crazy busy. You're always doing stuff. So thank you for coming, hanging out with
My
us.
pleasure. I love nerding out about this sort of stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for setting this up. And I think just if people are in an uncertain time in their life, like you can get through it. There is a pathway out. And I hope that this, demystifies some things about one particular path that you might be able to take. But yeah, I feel for you. I think LaShawn and I have definitely been in that situation before, and you can get out of it.
Yeah. And thank you, Philip, so much for. I didn't really give you an option. I was just like, Philip, we're doing a live stream.
I mean, I kind of said, sure, let's do it.
He's like, let's do it. Yeah. But he's always like up for doing anything coding related, anything tech related. So if you want to ask him a question, you need help with anything, seriously, hit Philip up. He's great with helping out.
Thanks.
And thank you, Potato.
I'm always happy to help you out, people. What'd you say? What?
I said thank you to Potato too, who made a guest appearance.
Yeah.
Guest star.
Yeah. A little baby.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for the moderators.
Whew. Thank you, Jake, for moderating. I'm so sorry to put you through almost 3 hours of unpaid work. You're an awesome friend. All right. We're going to end the stream, but like I said, this will be available shortly if you want to go back and review it later. So take care, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye, everyone.